Have you ever felt lost in life? Like all your efforts were meaningless and the future seemed uncertain? You're not alone. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and survivor of the Auschwitz concentration camp, endured some of the harshest conditions imaginable: hunger, the loss of loved ones, and unimaginable cruelty. Yet, in the midst of that deepest darkness, he discovered a vital truth. It's not your circumstances that define your life, but the way you choose to respond and find meaning in every moment that can truly save you. If you're searching for a way to regain motivation, mental strength, and a sense of purpose, then this video is for you. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit like and follow the channel so you won't miss more life-changing book insights. Part 1. Life in the Concentration Camp, the Ultimate Test. Viktor Frankl begins his book by recounting the harrowing days inside the Nazi concentration camps, where people were stripped of everything: freedom, dignity, the right to survive, and even hope. He observed that those who lost hope or no longer had a reason to live often perished more quickly, both mentally and physically. In contrast, those who discovered even the slightest meaning to hold on to displayed an astonishing ability to endure. Frankl tells the story of an elderly prisoner who spoke every day about his family waiting for him outside the camp. Though his body was frail, he continued to rise, work, and even help fellow prisoners. The image of his family and his reason to live became a powerful source of strength, enabling him to withstand suffering that might have broken others. Frankl emphasizes that even in the harshest environment, inner freedom cannot be taken away. Despite strict control, hunger, and disease, many prisoners retained the ability to choose their response. They chose kindness, mutual support, or faith in a better future. Some secretly taught each other to read and write, or gathered to pray, even for just a minute a day. These small acts preserved a sense of meaning in the midst of despair. A modern parallel can be seen in the survivors of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Many lost their homes, jobs, and even loved ones. Yet, by holding on to the belief in rebuilding their community or caring for their children, they managed to push through the darkest days. This resilience mirrors Frankl's philosophy. Material hardship does not necessarily destroy the human spirit if one can find a reason to live. Frankl concludes that survival is not merely about enduring physically, it is about discovering purpose even in the depths of suffering. This insight later became the foundation of his theory of logotherapy, that the ultimate goal in life is not happiness, but meaning. Meaning in every moment, no matter how unbearable the circumstances. When everything else is taken away, meaning is the one thing left to cling to, the lifeline that allows you to keep moving forward. It is this ability to find value in suffering that gave many the strength to survive and reclaim their inner spirit. Part 2. Discovering logotherapy, the power of finding meaning. After his harrowing experiences in the concentration camps, Viktor Frankl developed logotherapy, a psychological approach that emphasizes humanity's ultimate goal is not happiness, but meaning. He realized that even in the most extreme suffering, if you have a reason to live, you can endure almost anything. Frankl demonstrated that meaning transcends circumstances. In the camps, those who found a purpose, caring for their children, protecting a friend, or holding on to their faith were far more likely to survive than those who had lost all hope. Even when the body was frail, the spirit, fueled by meaning, became an extraordinary source of strength. A modern example of this truth can be seen in Nick Vujicic, a motivational speaker born without arms or legs. At first, life seemed meaningless to him, but once he discovered his purpose, helping others, He overcame despair, built an international career, and inspired millions around the world. Similarly, Frankl showed that meaning can save people even in circumstances that seem unbearable. Another example comes from the COVID-19 pandemic. Doctors and nurses faced overwhelming pressure, high risks of infection, and the devastating loss of colleagues. Yet by finding meaning in saving lives and protecting their communities, they reinforced their spirits and endured those extreme days. Frankl concluded that while we cannot control our circumstances, we can always choose our response and uncover meaning in each moment. When you have a clear sense of purpose, you can withstand suffering, overcome challenges, and develop inner resilience. Logotherapy teaches us that meaning, not circumstances, not material possessions, is the driving force that helps us endure hardship and live a fulfilled life.
Part 3. The 3 pathways to meaning in life. Viktor Frankl emphasized that no matter the circumstances, whether in hardship or in comfort, people can discover meaning in life through 3 main pathways. 1. Purposeful work, creating value for others. Frankl believed that dedicating yourself to meaningful work and creating value for others is one of the most powerful ways to find purpose. Even in extreme situations, those who discovered their mission were able to remain resilient. Take Fred Rogers, the beloved creator and host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He devoted his life to educating and inspiring American children. Despite pressures and criticism, he persisted because he saw profound meaning in helping children understand their emotions and learn to love others. 2. Experiencing life and love, finding meaning through relationships and beauty. Frankl highlighted that life experiences, love, and human connection bring deep meaning. In the concentration camps, even small moments, watching the sunrise or sharing stories with a fellow prisoner, helped people hold on to their spirit. Malala Yousafzai, who survived violence and death threats for fighting for girls' education in Pakistan, continued her studies and inspired the world. Her love for knowledge and passion to change lives gave her the courage to overcome unimaginable fear. 3. Facing suffering, discovering meaning in how you respond. Frankl stressed that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can always choose how to respond. Suffering is inevitable, but if we face it with meaning, it can become a source of inner growth. For example, surfer Bethany Hamilton lost her arm in a shark attack. Instead of giving up, she returned to surfing and became an inspiration to millions. Her resilience and the meaning she found in overcoming pain perfectly illustrate Frankl's message. Meaning can be discovered even in the harshest trials. In the end, meaning in life can be found through purposeful work, experiencing love and life, and the way we respond to suffering. By embracing all 3, we build lasting inner strength and the ability to overcome any challenge. Part 4. The freedom to choose our attitude. One of Viktor Frankl's most profound messages is that even when everything is taken away, human beings still retain the freedom to choose their attitude. In the concentration camps, every external freedom was stripped away. No food, no safety, no privacy. Yet inner freedom, the way you respond to your circumstances, remained within your control. Prisoners who held on to faith, kindness, or hope not only survived longer, but also preserved their dignity and humanity. There were those who, even under torture, chose to smile, encourage a fellow prisoner, or share a small portion of bread. These simple acts helped them hold on to their spirit. Even in complete isolation, Frankl reminded himself that he must survive to tell the world this story. The choice to respond with purpose and perspective became a powerful force, enabling people to endure trials that seemed impossible. In modern times, figures like Fred Rogers, the host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, embodied this same principle. Despite public criticism and the pressures of his work, he chose to respond with love, understanding, and dedication to educating children. His positive attitude not only strengthened him, but also inspired millions of viewers. This freedom to choose one's attitude is also visible in those facing personal crises or natural disasters. When struck by loss, they could not control what had happened, but they could control how they embraced it, what they learned from it, and how they moved forward. Choosing courage, finding meaning in suffering, and responding with hope not only allowed them to endure, but also gave them the strength to inspire others. A person may be stripped of every material possession, but the way they choose to respond, the attitude they hold, remains the most precious freedom of all. And it is this inner strength that allows us to find meaning even in the darkest of circumstances.
Part 5. Finding Meaning in Suffering. Frankl emphasized that suffering is an inevitable part of life. What defines our inner strength is not how great the suffering is, but how we perceive it and what meaning we are able to find within it. We cannot always change our circumstances, but we can always control our response and even transform pain into an opportunity for growth. In the concentration camps, Frankl witnessed prisoners who sustained their spirit by imagining the day they would be free, reunited with family, or able to complete unfinished missions. Some even shared their last piece of bread with fellow prisoners, despite being on the edge of starvation themselves. These small yet profound acts of finding meaning in suffering helped preserve their dignity and gave them the will to survive. In today's world, suffering doesn't only come from war. It often comes from struggles familiar to many Americans: losing a job, failed investments, or being trapped in overwhelming debt. Someone who loses their job after years of dedication might feel like their life has collapsed. Yet, if they see it as a chance to learn new skills, start a second career, or launch a business from passion, unemployment can become a doorway to renewal. Others who lost everything in bad investments chose to view failure as tuition for the future, rebuilding stronger financial foundations. Even families buried in debt, scraping to survive day by day, often discovered greater unity, gratitude for small things, and eventually found a way out through resilience. Oprah Winfrey is a powerful example. She grew up in poverty, endured abuse, and lacked love and security. But instead of being defined as a victim, she transformed suffering into a driving force, one that allowed her to inspire millions. In doing so, she not only healed herself, but also created immense value for society. The ultimate message is this: suffering is not the end, but a pathway to meaning and growth. When we endure with a clear reason, we unlock extraordinary strength, the strength to live, to act, and even to become a source of inspiration for others. Part 6. Applying it to modern life, finding meaning to live fully. Frankl teaches us that meaning is not something we wait for on a perfect day. It is something we can cultivate in every action, every decision, and every moment of daily life. In today's world, filled with work pressure, financial stress, unexpected crises like pandemics or personal struggles, it's easy to feel lost. But Frankl reminds us, while we cannot control our circumstances, we can always control our response. And in that choice lies our strength and our meaning to keep moving forward. There are countless people who have proven this truth. Take Colonel Harlan Sanders, founder of KFC. His life was marked by hardship, losing his father as a child, dropping out of school, facing repeated job losses. By the age of 65, all he had left was a $105 Social Security check. Most people would have given up, but Sanders saw adversity as a chance to start over. He traveled from place to place, pitching his fried chicken recipe, and was rejected hundreds of times before finally finding success. Out of old age and failure, he built a global empire and left behind a lasting legacy enjoyed by millions. Or consider J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a worldwide phenomenon, she was an unemployed single mother, living on welfare, rejected by dozens of publishers. Instead of collapsing under her pain, Rowling transformed her struggles and loneliness into a story that sparked imagination and hope for millions of readers around the globe. Even Steve Jobs, after being fired from Apple, the very company he founded, fell into one of the darkest periods of his life. But he chose to see it
as a new beginning. He created Next, acquired Pixar, and eventually returned to Apple, leading it to become one of the most iconic technology companies in the world. These stories remind us of a powerful truth. Suffering and failure are not the end. They can be the beginning of a new chapter, if we choose to find meaning in them. Frankl leaves us with a profound message. We cannot control everything that happens in life, but we can always control how we perceive it and how we respond. Inner strength and a sense of meaning are our greatest assets. They allow us to endure hardship, grow stronger, and ultimately live a fulfilling life. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit like to support the channel and follow so you won't miss more inspiring book summaries. And remember, every moment you discover meaning is a step closer to the life you truly want.
Think about people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, or Elon Musk. Their starting point wasn't millions of dollars sitting in the bank. Their starting point was a vision in their minds, an image they fully believed in, and then worked on every single day until it became reality. Neville Goddard, a renowned 20th century philosopher and lecturer, devoted his life to teaching about the power of imagination. In his book, Awakened Imagination, he emphasized that every change in your life, whether it's success, happiness, or prosperity, begins with your ability to imagine and believe in what you cannot yet see. When applied to financial freedom, this teaching holds a special power. You don't need to wait until you already have a lot of money to begin your journey toward wealth. What you need is to awaken your imagination. Clearly picture the person you want to become and let that belief guide your daily actions. And once you learn how to master your imagination, you'll realize this truth. Wealth doesn't start in your wallet. It starts in your mind. If you'd like to keep exploring this mindset and unlock your own path to financial freedom, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel so you won't miss out on more empowering lessons like this one. Part 1. Human beings are products of imagination. Neville Goddard begins with a foundational statement. People are not merely products of their circumstances. First and foremost, they are products of the images they carry in their minds. He doesn't say that the material world is meaningless. Rather, he insists that every visible change begins with an inner vision, an idea nurtured until it becomes belief, which then drives action and ultimately manifests as external reality. Neville describes this process in simple terms. You imagine, then you feel it, the subconscious accepts it, you act on it, and the material world reflects it back to you. The key isn't just to daydream for fun, but to imagine with genuine emotion, to live in the feeling that it is already real. When images and emotions are repeated often enough, the subconscious treats them as truth and begins guiding your thoughts, choices, and daily habits in that direction. From a psychological standpoint, this explains the phenomenon of the self-fulfilling prophecy, or the mechanism of selective attention. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll overlook them. If you believe they exist, you'll notice and seize them. Neville's point is clear. To change the outer world, you must first rewrite the script in your mind. Once the script changes, your behavior changes. When behavior changes, results follow. Applied to financial freedom, the implications are obvious. Someone who constantly repeats, "Money is always short, I don't know how to invest," will act out of fear, holding on to cash, avoiding risk, and ignoring opportunities, and naturally their financial life mirrors that belief. On the other hand, someone who imagines themselves as a capable money manager, someone with the habit of investing consistently, will form habits to match, opening an investment account, automating monthly transfers, learning about index funds, and taking calculated risks. The mental picture guides the behavior, and over time, the behavior creates visible wealth. Consider some everyday illustrations. One person lives paycheck to paycheck and constantly complains, "I can't afford to invest." They dismiss every investment ad as irrelevant. Another person, with the same income, spends 15 minutes each night visualizing financial goals, writing down their emergency fund target, imagining the relief of having surplus money to invest, and then the next morning automatically transfers $50 into an investment account. After a few years, the difference is not just the account balance, but the mindset.
The second person lives according to a completely different map, which opens up choices that were invisible before. Successful entrepreneurs often embody this principle. Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and countless other founders began with an unrealized picture, a product, an experience, a market, before money or teams appeared. They nurtured that vision strongly enough to take risks, attract resources, and persist in action. As Neville would say, it was imagination that wrote the script for their chain of actions. It's also worth noting the role of motivation and emotion. Imagination isn't an empty exercise if it's charged with feeling. When you imagine financial freedom with emotions like peace, gratitude, and responsibility, you reduce fear-driven reactions and increase resilience to temporary setbacks, a vital trait for continuing to invest when markets fluctuate. By contrast, imagination colored by fear only reinforces a negative spiral. In summary, Neville's argument in this section is a strategic call. Before you change the numbers in your account, design a clear inner map. Write down a vivid image of the financial life you want, not vague daydreams, but a picture infused with feeling, your target numbers, how it feels to open your banking app each morning, how you spend your time when money is no longer a constant worry. As you repeat this image daily, your subconscious begins to adjust small choices, saving instead of spending, learning instead of ignoring, investing instead of hesitating. And it is precisely these small choices, accumulated over time, that crystallize into financial freedom.
Part 2. The Power of Visualization. Neville Goddard emphasizes that imagination is not some meaningless game of the mind. It is the most powerful creative force human beings possess. When you visualize, you're not merely thinking about something. You are living in the state that it is already real. This state plants a seed in the subconscious, and the subconscious then arranges circumstances, opportunities, and even people around you to mirror what you have imagined. He presents a simple principle. Visualization with emotion gives birth to belief. Belief shapes behavior. Behavior creates results. That cycle repeats over and over, gradually aligning the outer world with the inner image. To understand this more clearly, compare it with modern neuroscience. Studies show that the brain doesn't strongly distinguish between a real experience and an emotionally charged, imagined experience. When an athlete visualizes crossing the finish line, both muscles and nerves respond similarly to actual training. That's why champions always practice mental rehearsal before competing. Neville goes further. He claims your entire life is the stage on which the visualizations you sustain over time are played out. Applied to finances, the power of visualization becomes strikingly clear. If someone constantly sees themselves as buried in debt, that image imprints deeply in the subconscious and leads to choices that reinforce the debt cycle. Overspending, delaying savings, impulsive investing. But if someone vividly imagines themselves as disciplined, with an emergency fund and a steadily growing investment account, that inner picture begins to pull their behavior toward it. They find it easier to say no to wasteful spending, easier to stick with automatic monthly investments, and calmer when markets fluctuate. Take Sarah, a 29-year-old in California, who once felt trapped by $45,000 in student loans. Instead of just thinking, "I need to pay this off," she began practicing visualization the way Neville suggested. Every night, she imagined seeing a zero balance on her loan statement and felt the relief and freedom of opening her banking app with no debt. She nurtured that emotion consistently. The result? Sarah started making small but powerful choices, taking extra freelance contracts, cutting back on dining out, and automating extra loan payments each month. 4 years later, she was debt-free and had her first savings to invest. The image in her mind became the anchor that pulled her out of the debt spiral. The same applies to anyone dreaming of financial independence. If you visualize yourself already financially free, for example with an investment portfolio generating enough passive income to live on, and feel that sense of security and autonomy right now, your subconscious will gradually guide your behavior onto that path. You'll start learning about index funds, optimizing your income,
and avoiding unnecessary risks. Instead of being emotionally swayed by the market, you act from a place of ownership because your mind has already identified you as financially independent. Neville's key message is this: the world you see is not the cause, it's the effect. Visualization is the cause. You don't wait until you have money to imagine yourself wealthy. You must first imagine it, live in the feeling of it, and only then will the path to making it real begin to unfold. Part 3. Beliefs and Assumptions. If in the previous section Neville highlighted the power of visualization, here he takes it a step further. Every belief you nurture, every assumption you hold within, sooner or later becomes your external reality. According to Neville, people don't live according to what they want, they live according to what they truly believe. You may want financial freedom, but if deep down you still believe that money is hard to earn, rich people are greedy, I'm not good with money, then those assumptions silently govern your actions and outcomes. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between truth and illusion. It simply operates according to the beliefs planted within it. He calls this the law of assumption. Assume the state you desire is already real and live as though it were present now. When you do, your thoughts, emotions, and actions gradually align with that state, and reality must shift to match it. Consider how this plays out in finance. Someone who believes, I'm the kind of person who's always in debt, will unconsciously recreate that script. They might pay off a credit card only to charge it up again on a vacation. In contrast, someone who assumes, I am disciplined, I am a long-term investor, will naturally make aligned decisions, opening a retirement account, ignoring get-rich-quick schemes, patiently building wealth. It's the assumption, not the wish, that writes the script of their life. Take Michael, a 35-year-old who once thought, I'm just not cut out for investing because my parents always struggled with money. He began shifting his assumption. Every night he repeated to himself, I am a wise investor, my money works for me. He didn't stop at words, he backed it with small actions, reading investment books, putting $50 a week into an index fund. 5 years later, not only had his portfolio grown steadily, but more importantly, he had transformed his self-image from someone fearful of money to someone with a solid belief that he could control his finances. Interestingly, behavioral science echoes this idea. When you believe, I am a runner, you're more likely to keep running than if you only set a goal to run 5K. Identity shapes behavior. Neville was teaching this decades ago. Assume yourself to be the person you want to become, and life will reflect that image back to you. On the path to financial freedom, belief and assumption are the true starting points. If you cling to the old belief that money is scarce, that I can't be wealthy, then every plan is just an empty shell. But if you change your assumption and live in the state of financial freedom as though it already exists, then your actions, choices, and opportunities will begin to align with it. Neville affirms, you don't need to chase wealth. You only need to assume you already are in that state, and it is that assumption that opens the way.
Part 4. Change yourself to change the world. Neville Goddard offered a revolutionary perspective. The outer world is not the cause, but merely the effect. It is the mirror reflecting your inner world. If you look around and see only struggle, scarcity, or debt, that isn't an unchangeable objective reality. It is the reflection of the beliefs, assumptions, and mental images you've been carrying within for a long time. To change the world you live in, you don't run out trying to fix every detail. You turn inward and change yourself first. He explains that people often get it backwards. They think, I'll be happy once I have more money, or I'll feel secure once I pay off all my debt. But Neville reverses the process. Change your inner state first. Feel abundance, freedom, and peace of mind right now, and then the outer world must rearrange itself to match that state. Consider a financial example. Emma, a 29-year-old teacher, always thought, I can only get by, I'll never be wealthy. She lived with constant worry about money, and true enough, she spent her entire paycheck each month.
After reading Neville, Emma began practicing inner change. She imagined herself in control of her money and felt the security of having even a small savings cushion. Instead of repeating, "I'll never have money," she shifted her assumption to, "I am a good money manager. Money flows to me consistently." From there, her behavior changed. She began automatically setting aside $100 a month, then investing a small portion into index funds. Within just 2 years, Emma had nearly $3,000 in savings, but more importantly, she broke free from the cycle of lack and stepped into a state of greater stability and peace. Neville stressed, "You cannot change the world by forcing it. You can only change yourself, and then the world changes in response." Just like standing in front of a mirror, you can't reach out and adjust the reflection. You must change yourself first, and the mirror will reflect the new image back. In the context of financial freedom, this means that if you hold on to a mindset of scarcity, of being always behind, then even with more income, you'll still feel it's never enough. But if you cultivate an inner state of abundance, every decision you make, from saving to investing to seeking opportunities, will align with that state, and your external results will begin to change. In other words, wealth doesn't start with your bank account balance. It starts with how you define and experience wealth in your own mind. Part 5. Acting from the state of already achieved. Neville Goddard insists what you desire can only become reality when you live in the state of already having it. You don't wait until money shows up in your account to feel secure. You feel that security right now. You don't wait until success arrives to feel confident. You carry the confidence of a successful person in this very moment. It may sound paradoxical, but this is the key. Neville calls it living from the end, living from the finished state. You clearly imagine the outcome you want, then step into it as if it has already happened. When your mind and emotions merge with that image, your behavior begins to shift, and it's precisely those new actions that lead you into the reality you envisioned. Take a financial example. John, a 32-year-old IT professional in New Jersey, longed for freedom, not working 60 hours a week just to cover debts. He used to think, once I'm debt-free, then I'll start investing. But after applying Neville's teachings, John changed his approach. He imagined himself as already financially free, waking up without bill anxiety, feeling the calm of having a safety cushion in his savings account. From that state, he began making different choices. Instead of spending his year-end bonus, he contributed to his 401k. Instead of buying new gadgets, he prioritized paying down his credit cards. Within 3 years, his debt had shrunk dramatically, his investments grew steadily, and most importantly, John had been living with the mindset of financial freedom long before it showed up in numbers. Another illustration. Think about long-term investors. Successful ones act as though they are already wealthy investors, patient, disciplined, unshaken by market swings. That state of being leads them to results that mirror the image they hold inside. Meanwhile, those who act like losers, panicking, selling off, or chasing trends, usually end up with exactly the outcomes they expected of themselves. Neville's reminder is clear. There is no bridge to your dream except walking from the state of already achieved. When you believe and feel "I already am," you naturally begin to live, choose, and act in alignment. And the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to reflect what you've affirmed within. On the journey to financial freedom, this means act as though you are already financially free, even if your current account balance doesn't reflect it yet. When you spend with discipline, invest consistently, and make decisions like someone who is secure and confident, sooner or later, reality will catch up to your inner state. In other words, live as if you are already wealthy in spirit, and material wealth will find its way to you.
Part 6. Awakening the Imagination. The power already within you. Neville Goddard emphasizes a core truth. Every bit of power you need to change your life is already within you, in your imagination. No one can hand you financial freedom.
happiness, or success unless you first awaken that power yourself. The reason most people fail is not because they lack opportunity, but because they've never believed their imagination has real, practical value. They see it as a daydream, not as a creative tool. Neville insists, when you awaken your imagination, you become the architect of your destiny. The outer world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the inner world you've envisioned. In today's context, this is clearer than ever. Technology, AI, and economic shifts may wipe out millions of jobs, but at the same time, they also open countless new paths: online businesses, crypto investing, content creation, digital asset building. The real question isn't, does the world still have opportunities for me? But do I have enough imagination to see them and enough faith to turn them into reality? Take Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. She once worked as a fax machine saleswoman with just $5,000 in savings. But in her imagination, she constantly saw herself creating a product women truly needed. She pictured her customers wearing her product and feeling more confident because of it. By holding firmly to that vision, Sarah transformed what seemed like a small idea into a billion-dollar empire. Or consider something more recent: everyday people who invested in crypto. They didn't step in because they had a guarantee of winning, but because they believed in a vision of the future, a decentralized financial system. That imagination of what could be drove them to learn, to take risks, and to stay consistent. Many of them changed their lives simply because they believed in what others could not yet see. Neville wants us to understand, awakening imagination isn't about wishful dreaming. It's about acting with faith. When you truly believe you have the right to financial freedom, that you can create value and build wealth, you begin to act differently, saving, investing, learning new skills, seeking new opportunities. And the outer world responds in kind. In the end, that power has always been within you. Not in the bank, not in your boss, not in the government. You hold the key. And as Neville Goddard said, imagination is God in action. When you awaken your imagination, you don't just open the door to creativity. You open the door to the prosperity and financial freedom you've always desired. If there's only one thing you remember from Neville Goddard, let it be this: you are the product of your imagination. The world isn't waiting for you to get lucky, and it isn't waiting for someone to hand you an opportunity. It simply reflects the beliefs, assumptions, and images you nurture in your mind. Financial freedom, prosperity, or any form of success, all of it begins with a single idea in your imagination. Just as Bill Gates once dreamed of a computer in every home, or Elon Musk once imagined humans living on Mars, you too can plant the seed of imagination for your own journey toward freedom and wealth. And don't forget, imagination isn't for idle daydreaming. It's the fire that fuels action, persistence, and living as though you've already achieved your vision. When you believe strongly enough and act long enough, the world will rearrange itself to mirror that belief. So starting today, make just one small shift in the way you think and the way you envision your future. Because that future, bright or dark, already lies within the power you hold.
Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You're certain a stock is going to rise because all the news is overwhelmingly optimistic, but just a few weeks later, it plummets out of nowhere. Or you buy something on sale, thinking you've saved a lot, only to realize later that you just spent money on something you didn't really need. This isn't a matter of personal stupidity. It's how the human brain works. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, calls it the two systems of thinking. One fast, instinctive, one slow, deliberate. And it's the conflict between these two systems that causes us to repeatedly make mistakes in our finances, at work, and even in the simplest everyday choices. If you want to understand why you often make the wrong decisions and how to gain better control. Join me as we explore the 7 biggest lessons from thinking fast and slow. And don't forget to like and follow the channel, because I'll be sharing more books that can help you become a wiser version of yourself. Part 1. 2 Systems of Thinking, Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman opens Thinking Fast and Slow with a simple yet profound idea. The human brain has 2 systems of thinking, which he calls System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast thinking, instinctive, automatic, and effortless. It's like your brain's autopilot. When you drive home on a familiar route, you don't have to think much, yet you steer, stop at red lights, and navigate traffic. When you look at a friend's face, you instantly sense whether they're happy or sad without analyzing it. That's System 1 at work. System 2, on the other hand, is slow thinking, deliberate, logical, and effortful. This is when you sit down to tackle the SAT, compare mortgage rates, or plan your retirement portfolio. System 2 is like manual mode, slower, more energy-consuming, but much more precise and controlled. It sounds balanced, but here's the catch. We rely on System 1 far more than we realize. It's quick, easy, and effortless, but that's also why we fall into traps. A classic example for Americans: you go to Target or Costco intending to buy just a few necessities, but you leave with a cart full of items because the deal is too good to pass up. That's System 1 driving impulsive behavior. Or when you see the stock market tanking on Robinhood or Fidelity, fear can push you to sell immediately, even though your rational mind knows markets move in cycles. Again, that's System 1 taking over. Meanwhile, System 2, though more tiring, protects your financial future. It's the moment you open a spreadsheet to track expenses, carefully compare APRs on credit cards, or read a home buying contract before signing. It's hard, sometimes even painful, but this slow, deliberate thinking prevents costly mistakes. Interestingly, the 2 systems aren't separate. They work together like 2 traveling companions. One is bold, quick, ready to act. The other, cautious, deliberate, sometimes annoyingly slow. If you only follow System 1, emotions and errors dominate. If you rely solely on System 2, you risk analysis paralysis and indecision. So, what's the takeaway? Learn when to trust your fast instincts and when to hit the brakes and think slow. When facing big decisions, buying a house, investing, choosing a career, let System 2 take the wheel. In emergencies, like slamming on the brakes to avoid an accident, trust System 1. By understanding the difference and balancing both, you can truly control your mind instead of letting it control you. Part 2. Cognitive Biases: Why We Often Get It Wrong. One of Daniel Kahneman's most important findings is this: the human brain isn't as rational as we like to think. Instead of always making purely logical decisions, we are often influenced by cognitive biases, mental shortcuts created by System 1 that are quick but full of traps. A classic example is availability bias. When you hear about a plane crash on CNN, your first thought might be, flying is dangerous. In reality, the risk of dying in a car accident in the US is dozens of times higher than in a plane crash. But because plane crashes are dramatic and memorable, your brain tricks you into overestimating the risk. Another common bias is the anchoring effect. If a house in your neighborhood is listed at $1 million, that number becomes an anchor in your mind. Even when a similar house is priced at $800,000, you may perceive it as a bargain, even though it might still be overpriced relative to its true value. This is why stores in the US often label items sale $199, originally $399. The original $399 is just an anchor, making you feel like you're saving a lot and nudging you to buy faster. There's also a bias very common in investing: herd mentality. When you see everyone buying tech stocks on Robinhood or jumping into crypto on Coinbase, you might feel compelled to join in, afraid of being left behind. But this FOMO, fear of missing out, often pushes investors to buy up the top and sell at the bottom. These biases don't just exist in finance, they show up in everyday life.
You might unconsciously judge someone based on appearance or a first impression rather than digging deeper. Or when recalling a memory, you focus on the ending and forget the process, something Kahneman calls the peak end rule. These biases keep us making mistakes without even realizing it. So, what's the takeaway? Kahneman doesn't suggest we can eliminate cognitive biases entirely. That's impossible because they're hardwired into the brain. But we can become more aware of them and train ourselves to engage System 2 in important decisions. Before buying a house, ask, am I being anchored by the initial number? Before investing, pause and reflect. Do I really believe in the long-term value, or am I just following the crowd? When you learn to recognize biases in your own behavior, you gain better control and make smarter choices with money, work, and personal relationships alike. And that's one of the keys to becoming a truly intelligent thinker.
Part 3. The illusion of understanding and overconfidence. One of the most subtle psychological traps Daniel Kahneman highlights is the illusion of understanding and the illusion of control. People often believe they fully understand the world around them and can predict outcomes, but reality is very different. Consider the US stock market. Looking back at the dot-com bubble of 2000 or the 2008 financial crisis, almost anyone can point to the signs that were there all along. Low interest rates, high leverage, the real estate bubble, inflated tech stocks. But this is hindsight bias. Once events have happened, we convince ourselves that we should have seen it coming. In reality, no one could be certain while it was happening. Alongside the illusion of understanding comes overconfidence. Many Americans believe they are better than average investors, better than average drivers, or better at predicting the market than others. It's a paradox, since not everyone can be above average, but our brains like to inflate our own abilities to feel safe and in control. Take the crypto market as an example. When Bitcoin skyrocketed from $10,000 to $60,000, millions of retail investors on Coinbase believed they had timed the market or had a special strategy. But when the market turned downward, most realized they had no real control. They were simply riding the market wave. The illusion of understanding also appears in everyday life. Many people believe they know why a marriage ended or why a company collapsed. But in reality, these are stories we construct after the fact to make events easier to accept. We don't truly know the cause, yet we label it obvious to reassure ourselves. Kahneman's lesson is clear. Be humble in the face of complexity. Never assume you understand and control everything. Even Wall Street professionals with teams of analysts and advanced technology make mistakes all the time. Instead of blind confidence, build strategies based on discipline, diversification, and risk management. The most important thing is to acknowledge your own limits. When you recognize that certainty is an illusion, you become more cautious, patient, and less likely to make hasty decisions, whether in investing, business, or personal life. And that, Kahneman suggests, is the beginning of true wisdom.
Part 4. Risk Assessment and Loss Aversion. One of Daniel Kahneman's most famous findings is that humans fear losses more than they desire gains. In other words, losing $100 hurts twice as much as gaining $100 feels good. This psychological phenomenon is called loss aversion, an obsession with avoiding losses. You can see it everywhere. In investing, many Americans hold on to losing stocks on Robinhood or Fidelity simply because they don't want to realize the loss, hoping the stock will bounce back. They fear facing the reality that they were wrong. The paradox is that holding on too long often leads to even greater losses. Meanwhile, when a small profit appears, they rush to sell to lock it in, rather than letting gains grow. The result? Investment portfolios that are always unbalanced, cutting profits short and letting losses drag on. Loss aversion doesn't just affect finances, It influences everyday decisions too. For example, an employee in New York might stay in a dull, barely livable job because they fear losing current stability, rather than risking a new opportunity. A small business owner in Texas may continue pouring money into a failing project simply to avoid admitting the initial loss. That fear keeps them trapped, instead of allowing them to start fresh in a smarter way. Kahneman points out that our brains are wired to avoid losses more than to pursue opportunities, because in prehistoric times, losses could mean life or death. But in modern society, this bias often leads to poor decisions. So what's the lesson? Learn to separate emotions from decisions, financial or otherwise. In investing, don't let fear of loss drive panic selling in a red market, or make you cling to a depreciated asset. Instead, plan ahead. Set stop-loss levels, target profits, and stick to your rules rather than acting emotionally. In life, remember that sometimes loss isn't failure. It's the tuition fee for bigger opportunities. Losing a job may be the turning point toward a more meaningful career. Losing a relationship may help you find the right person. Ultimately, Kahneman reminds us that the goal isn't to avoid loss at all costs. It's to manage it wisely. When you dare to take calculated risks, you won't be trapped by fear, and you'll have the chance to go further, both in investing and in life. Part 5. Decision-making under uncertainty. One of the biggest challenges in life and finance is making decisions under uncertainty. Kahneman emphasizes that humans like to feel in control, but the truth is most important decisions happen in environments full of unpredictability. Imagine you're considering buying a tech stock on the NASDAQ. The flashing green and red charts on Robinhood or Fidelity make you anxious. You can't be sure whether the stock will rise or fall, and every prediction contains an element of randomness. This is uncertainty. According to Kahneman, people often fall prey to overconfidence, believing they can predict the future and try to find patterns in data, even when those patterns are completely random. A relatable example for Americans: buying a home in San Francisco or Austin. You look at rising home prices over the past few years and convince yourself prices will continue to climb. But real estate markets fluctuate, and no one can be certain. Making decisions based on this false sense of certainty is a classic example of System 1 driving behavior. Kahneman stresses that the best way to make decisions under uncertainty is to rely on principles and probabilities, not emotions. In investing, this means diversifying your portfolio, not betting heavily on a single stock, and planning for the long term. In life, it could mean keeping an emergency fund or having a backup plan when changing jobs or moving. Another key lesson is to recognize risk and accept failure as part of the process. If you join a startup in Silicon Valley, no one can guarantee success, but understanding that failure is natural and learning from it helps you make smarter decisions in the future. Finally, Kahneman emphasizes survival and success don't come from predicting the future accurately. They come from smart risk management and disciplined action. By accepting uncertainty and establishing your own guiding principles, you reduce fear, avoid major mistakes, and increase your chances of better outcomes in investing, career, and life.
Part 6. The influence of emotions and intuition on decisions. Daniel Kahneman emphasizes that emotions and intuition have a powerful impact on our decisions, but they're not always reliable. System 1, the fast, automatic part of the brain, produces instant judgments based on experience and feelings, yet it's also prone to biases and logical errors. Take the US stock market as an example. When you open an app like Robinhood or E-Trade and see a series of red candles, your heart races and you may panic sell immediately. Conversely, when charts show a steady upward trend in blue, you feel excitement and want to bet bigger. This emotional influence on financial decisions is one of the biggest enemies of investors, according to Kahneman. Emotions also affect life decisions. An employee in New York might rush to accept a high-paying job that doesn't fit simply because they fear missing out, or reject a Harvard scholarship due to social pressure and worry about being far from home.
Intuition can help you make quick decisions in familiar situations, but when facing complexity and high risk, it often leads to mistakes. A positive example: NBA or NFL athletes develop intuition through thousands of hours of practice, and it works exceptionally well on the court or field. But applying that same intuition to investing or business can be disastrous. Kahneman emphasizes that intuition is only reliable in areas with clear structure, rapid feedback, and extensive experience. The key takeaway? Don't let emotions control important decisions. Before acting, pause and switch from System 1 to System 2, the slower analytical part of the brain, and carefully consider the data, risks, and consequences. By training yourself to recognize emotional influences and learning to manage them, you'll make wiser decisions, minimize errors, and improve your chances of success in investing, business, and life. Part 7. Group decisions and social influence. Kahneman points out that our decisions are influenced not only by personal emotions, but also by social pressures and group behavior. We often believe we make decisions independently, but in reality, herd behavior causes many people to act alike, sometimes leading to collective mistakes. Imagine watching Bitcoin or tech stocks on Coinbase or NASDAQ. When online communities constantly talk about an unmissable investment opportunity, it's easy to get swept up in the crowd, ignoring fundamental investing principles. From the dot-com bubble in 2000 to meme stocks like GameStop in 2021, this pattern repeats. People act out of FOMO, fear of missing out, rather than logic and data analysis. Social influence also impacts everyday life. An employee in New York might rush to overspend to keep up with friends, or choose a career based on family expectations rather than personal passion. Kahneman emphasizes that recognizing social influence helps you make conscious decisions, stick to principles, and reduce the risk of mistakes. The final lessons from Thinking Fast and Slow are: identify psychological biases, illusions of understanding, overconfidence, loss aversion, emotional influence, and social pressures. Learn to make decisions based on data, principles, and risk management rather than fleeting emotions. Understand that failure and risk are natural parts of life, but wise decision-making helps you move further and achieve better outcomes. By applying these principles, you not only become a smarter investor, but also a wiser decision-maker in every aspect of life. If you found this content valuable, like this video and follow the channel so you won't miss more audiobooks and book summaries designed to improve financial thinking, life decisions, and wealth-building strategies. Good luck on your journey to becoming a smart decision-maker and achieving financial freedom.
Dear friend, have you ever asked yourself, why can't I seem to change? Maybe you set goals to lose weight, pick up a new skill, or save money for financial freedom. Yet somehow those beautiful plans fade away and you find yourself back at square one. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, once faced the same struggle. As a young man, he suffered a severe injury that nearly ended his future. But through small, consistent daily habits, he recovered, rose above his challenges, and became one of the world's leading experts on the science of habits. And he discovered a powerful truth: success doesn't come from massive changes, but from thousands of tiny improvements compounded over time. In today's journey, we'll dive into atomic habits, not just dry theories, but real stories and vivid examples of how a simple 1% improvement each day can transform your entire life. Part 1. The fundamentals. Picture this. You're standing in a packed baseball stadium in the US, surrounded by tens of thousands of cheering fans. A player steps up to the plate, swings the bat, and in that instant, one single hit could change the entire game. Most people think success works the same way, like that one spectacular moment, a dramatic breakthrough. But James Clear argues otherwise. Success isn't a single moment. It's the result of hundreds, even thousands of small actions compounded over time. He calls this
the compounding effect of habits. Here's a real-life American example. If you decide to save just $1 a day and invest it in an S&P 500 index fund, after 30 years, you could have more than $40,000 thanks to compound interest. But if you spend that same dollar on a soda every day, you don't just lose the money, you also harm your health, which could lead to massive medical bills down the road. It's those small, seemingly harmless habits that actually determine whether you end up wealthy or broke, healthy or sick, happy or miserable. James Clear offers a simple formula. If you improve yourself by just 1% every day, after 1 year, you'll be 37 times better than when you started. But if you get 1% worse each day, in 365 days, you'll nearly hit rock bottom. And this isn't just theory. Take Olympic athletes, for example. Gold medalists don't necessarily train in a completely different way than silver medalists. The difference is often tiny, slightly more focused, a bit more disciplined, sustained over many years. That small edge, compounded over time, is what creates champions. The fascinating part is, habits are never neutral. Whether you realize it or not, they're constantly shaping your life. Someone who reads just 10 minutes every night will, after a few years, have a wealth of knowledge far ahead of others. Meanwhile, someone who spends 3 hours watching TV every night will, after a few years, feel drained, unproductive, and short on time for what truly matters. James Clear emphasizes, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals are like the finish line, but systems are the path that gets you there. If you focus on your systems, the daily habits you practice, the results will naturally follow. For example, an American entrepreneur doesn't need to obsess over becoming a millionaire overnight. Instead, he can start by managing monthly expenses, investing 10% of his income, and improving his skills a little each day. A decade later, becoming a millionaire feels almost inevitable. On the other hand, if he simply dreams of millions but keeps spending recklessly, that dream will remain nothing more than fantasy. The core message James Clear delivers in this opening section is simple yet profound. Habits are the atoms of life, small on their own, but when compounded, they hold immense power. You don't need to change the world overnight. Just change one small action, repeat it every single day, and over time, you'll be astounded by the massive transformation it creates.
Part 2. Law number 1. Make it obvious. Think back to the last time you drove home from work. Do you remember every single turn, every red light, every stop along the way? Probably not. You just remember getting into the car, and suddenly, you were already home. That's the power of unconscious habits. James Clear explains that so many of our daily habits happen automatically, without us even noticing. And that's why the very first step to changing your life is this: make your habits obvious. He introduces a technique called the habit scorecard. Here's how it works. Write down everything you do in a typical day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. Wake up, check phones, scroll through social media, make coffee, eat breakfast, go to work. Then mark each one. Is it a good habit, a bad habit, or a neutral one? It sounds simple, but you'll be surprised at how many things you do over and over without adding real value to your life. In fact, research in the US shows that the average adult checks their phone 262 times per day, most of it mindlessly. And James Clear emphasizes, you can't change a habit if you don't even recognize you're doing it. Imagine a typical American office worker. The very first thing he does in the morning is open his work email. Seems harmless, right? But in reality, this triggers stress from the very start of the day. His brain goes into emergency mode all the time. Over months and years, he feels burned out and unfocused. But now imagine he makes one clear new habit. After I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes. It's a tiny change, but it helps him start the day calmer, with less stress, and over time his productivity rises dramatically.
This is where James Clear introduces the concept of implementation intention. Instead of vague statements like, "I'll exercise more," you rewrite it as a clear, specific plan. I will go to the gym at 6 a.m. at the fitness center below my apartment. The formula is simple. I will, behavior, at, time, in, location. In one U.S. study on flu vaccinations, researchers found that the group who wrote down the exact day and time they planned to get the shot were 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through compared to those who just heard, "You should get vaccinated." The lesson? When you make a habit obvious, it becomes almost like a command your brain can't ignore. Another powerful tool is habit stacking, attaching a new habit to one you already have. For example, after I drink my morning coffee, I will read 1 page of a book. After I put down my phone at night, I will write down 3 things I'm grateful for. This way, your old habit becomes a trigger that automatically activates the new one. Here's a fun example. In an office in Texas, employees wanted to improve their health but didn't have much time to exercise, so they started a tiny stacked habit. Every time they walked through the office doorway, they would stop and stretch for 5 seconds. Within a few months, the whole office joined in. The result? Everyone felt more energized and positive throughout the day. James Clear concludes with this key message. If you want to change your life, start by noticing what you're actually doing. Write it down. Make it obvious. Connect it to clear signals in your daily routine. Because habits can only be changed once you truly see them. Part 3. Law number 2. Make it attractive. In the previous part, we learned that if you want to change your life, you have to make your habits obvious. Now James Clear reveals another secret. We only stick to habits that our brain finds attractive. The human brain works on a very simple principle. If a behavior is linked to pleasure or reward, we're likely to repeat it. If a behavior is linked to pain or discomfort, we avoid it. This is called the dopamine principle. And here's the catch. Dopamine doesn't just show up when you receive the reward. It's released the moment you anticipate the reward. That anticipation is what makes a habit so irresistible. Take the fast food industry in America as an example. McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell all thrive on this dopamine principle. When you see the bright yellow arches of McDonald's on the highway, your brain immediately recalls the smell of crispy French fries. You haven't eaten anything yet, but dopamine is already there, triggered by the expectation of the reward. That's why the US has one of the highest obesity rates in the world, because the habit of fast food has been made so attractive it feels nearly impossible to resist. James Clear says that if you want to build good habits, you have to make them attractive. One powerful method is called temptation bundling, pairing something you need to do with something you want to do. For example, I can only listen to my favorite podcast while cycling on the exercise bike. I can only watch Netflix when I'm folding laundry. In Philadelphia, researchers tested this method with gym goers. Participants were only allowed to listen to addictive audiobooks while working out. The result? Gym attendance increased dramatically because the brain began to crave the reward tied to the workout. Another key factor, we tend to do what the people around us are doing. James Clear calls this social norms. In America, if you grow up in a family where everyone invests in the stock market, opening an account on Robinhood or Vanguard feels natural. But if you grow up in a household where every paycheck goes straight to bills and debt payments, your financial habits will likely follow that same path. A striking example is the New York City Marathon. At first, only a small group participated, but thanks to social influence, the number of runners skyrocketed. Friends invited friends, coworkers posted pictures on Facebook, and slowly, running became a social habit, embraced by thousands of Americans. The lesson is clear. If you want to build good habits, place yourself in an environment where that habit is considered normal. Because habits aren't just actions, they're also the emotions tied to them. Want to break a bad habit? Make it unattractive.
Want to cultivate a good one? Attach it to joy, rewards, or anticipation. James Clear puts it best. The more attractive a habit is, the more likely you are to follow through on it.
Part 4. Law number 3. Make it easy. Think back to a time when you were determined to change yourself. Maybe it was going to the gym, eating healthier, or learning a new skill. At first, you were full of motivation, but after just a few days or weeks, things started to feel heavy, and eventually you gave up. James Clear explains this very simply. Human beings always take the path of least resistance. Our brains hate complexity. The easier a behavior is, the fewer steps it requires, the less effort it takes, the more likely it is to become a habit. On the other hand, if something demands too much energy, the brain will find excuses to delay or avoid it. For example, if your fridge is packed with soda, chips, and fast food, chances are you'll grab those instead of slicing up an apple. But if you keep fresh fruit and water front and center and store the junk food out of sight, or better yet, don't buy it at all, healthy eating becomes the default choice. This is the principle. Make good habits easy and bad habits hard. James Clear introduces a powerful idea, the 2-minute rule. The idea is simple. Any habit can be started in under 2 minutes. Want to read every day? Start by reading just 1 page. Want to run? Just put on your running shoes. Want to write? Sit down and write 1 sentence. It sounds almost trivial, but the truth is, starting is the hardest part. Once you begin, continuing becomes much easier. In the US, many people apply this rule to build financial habits. Instead of thinking, I need to save $500 each month, they start small by automatically transferring just $5 a day into savings. The number is small, but it's easy, and that's how the habit takes root. Another way to make it easy is through automation. In America, people with strong financial habits don't rely on willpower, they rely on systems. They set up auto pay for bills like electricity, water, and internet. They set up auto invest to put money into an S&P 500 index fund each month. They use auto delivery for essentials like vitamins and groceries, so they don't have to think about it. Automation removes the temptation to procrastinate and turns hard decisions into effortless defaults. Take Warren Buffett, the legendary American investor. He didn't become wealthy from one lucky investment, but from thousands of small, repeated actions over decades. Buffett once said, "The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken." He didn't try to pick short-term stocks every day. Instead, he automated his strategy. Buy good companies, hold them long-term, and let the system work for him. That's the ultimate example of making it easy. Success doesn't belong to the person with the strongest willpower. It belongs to the person who designs an environment where the right actions are easy. Want to build good habits? Reduce friction. Make them easy to start. Want to break bad habits? Increase friction. Make them harder to do. As James Clear writes, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Part 5. Law number 4. Make it satisfying. Human beings are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. For thousands of years, our brains have been programmed this way. If an action gives you an immediate reward, we tend to repeat it. If it causes instant discomfort or punishment, we avoid it. James Clear calls this the final key to sustaining habits. Make them satisfying. Think about it. Eating a cheeseburger gives you an immediate reward, the taste, the fullness, the comfort, but the consequences, like weight gain or heart disease, come years later. On the other hand, working out for 30 minutes brings immediate discomfort, soreness, sweat, fatigue. The reward, a stronger, healthier body, only shows up months down the road. This is the delayed reward problem. Bad habits give quick rewards with long-term consequences. Good habits give long-term rewards but short-term pain. So, how do we balance this?
James Clear's solution? Make good habits satisfying right away. One famous example comes from Jerry Seinfeld, America's top comedian. He once shared his secret to writing consistently, using a wall calendar. Every day he wrote, he marked a big red X on the calendar. After a few days, the X's formed a chain. And the real satisfaction came from this thought: I don't want to break the chain. This is called a visual reward. You can use it for any habit. Each time you save money, mark it in a tracker. Each time you exercise, log it in an app. Each time you read, fill in another square on a progress chart. Simply seeing the results creates instant satisfaction, which motivates the brain to keep going. In the US, many financial apps use this principle. For example, Acorns, every time you buy something with your credit card, the app automatically rounds up your purchase and invests the spare change. Instantly, you feel like you're investing without effort. Robinhood, when you buy a stock, the app shows a little firework animation. It's a tiny detail, but it creates excitement and encourages you to keep investing. By adding immediate rewards, new behaviors become much easier to stick with over the long run. And it works the other way too. You can make bad habits painful right away. For example, in the US, many people use budgeting apps. If they overspend, the app sends an alert. You've gone over your $100 weekly budget. That instant feeling of guilt pushes them to correct their behavior. Some people even use an accountability partner. They make a deal. If I don't go to the gym 3 times this week, I'll send you $50. That immediate financial loss is far more motivating than vague promises. When a habit delivers instant satisfaction, your brain remembers it and craves it again. When a bad habit causes instant pain, your brain avoids it. As James Clear writes, we don't stick with habits that have delayed rewards, we stick with the ones that make us feel good immediately.
Part 6. Advanced Tactics. Once you've mastered the 4 golden rules, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. You've built a solid foundation. But James Clear doesn't stop there. He wants us to dig deeper. How do we make habits a true part of our identity? And how do we sustain them when life gets more complicated? 1. Don't chase goals, build systems. In America, people often set specific goals. I want to lose 20 pounds before summer. I want to save $10,000 this year. I want to read 30 books. But here's the problem. Goals tell you what you want, while systems are what actually get you there. For example, if you want to save $10,000 but don't have a spending system, you'll likely fail. If you want to lose weight but don't build a system of exercise and diet, the scale won't move. As James Clear writes, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? You should ask, what system do I need to succeed every day? 2. Habits and identity. Who am I? One of James Clear's most powerful strategies is this. Habits don't just change behavior, they change identity. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I am a runner. Instead of, I want to read more books, say, I am a reader. Research in the US shows that when people tie behavior to their identity, they stick with it longer. Take Weight Watchers, for example. Members succeed not only because they track calories, but because they start to see themselves as people who manage their weight. Every small repeated action is a vote for the person you wish to become. 3. The golden rule of improvement, the 1% principle. James Clear emphasizes this truth. Tiny changes, compounded over time, create massive results. Imagine this. If you improve just 1% every day, by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better. But if you decline 1% daily, you'll almost lose everything within a year. American companies like Amazon and Tesla thrive on this principle. They don't aim for overnight revolutions. They focus on small, constant optimizations. With personal habits, it's the same. Every workout, every page you read, every dollar you save, all compound into extraordinary transformation. 4. Know when breakthroughs happen. There's a paradox with habits. Results are often delayed. James Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential. Think of an ice cube in a room. The temperature drops from 35 degrees Fahrenheit to 32 degrees. Nothing happens. But drop it one more degree and suddenly the ice melts. It's the same with habits. You might work out for 3 months with no visible change. Then, in the 4th month, your body suddenly transforms. The lesson? Don't quit just because you don't see progress yet. Habits are long-term investments. The payoff always comes later, often all at once. 5. Focus on who you want to become. In the end, the most important question isn't what do I want to achieve, but who do I want to become? If you want to be wealthy, live like someone who manages money wisely. If you want to be healthy, live like an athlete, even in small daily ways. Across the U.S., millions have applied atomic habits not just to change behaviors, but to change identity. And that's the most sustainable transformation of all. This advanced section isn't just about keeping habits, it's about leveling up. Focus on systems, not goals. Build identity through small habits. Harness the power of 1% improvement. Stay patient until the breakthrough arrives. It's the shift from doing to becoming. And once habits are tied to your identity, you'll never have to force them again. My friend, we've just taken a journey through how small habits can transform your entire life. From understanding the power of just 1% improvement each day, to mastering the 4 golden rules of habit building and even the advanced strategies that turn habits into your very identity. The biggest message James Clear shares in Atomic Habits is this: you don't need to change overnight. Every great success is built from small actions, repeated day after day. Your habits shape who you are, and who you are will ultimately shape your future. If you're truly serious about changing your mindset, your finances, your health, and your career, then start today with just one small action you can repeat tomorrow. And if you found this book helpful, don't forget to hit like and follow the channel so we can continue this journey together with more audiobooks. Books that can shift your thinking and bring you closer to wealth, freedom, and happiness. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next book.
Have you ever felt like you're living on autopilot? In the morning, you roll out of bed, grab your phone, scroll for a few minutes, and before you know it, time's gone. After work, exhausted, you reach for a drink or a cigarette to take the edge off. Sometimes, you order fast food for convenience, promising yourself that tomorrow you'll start eating healthy. And at night, instead of going to bed early, you stay up late glued to Netflix or TikTok. Day after day, these small habits pile up, and sometimes you can't help but wonder, why do I keep repeating things I know aren't good for me? Charles Duhigg, the author of The Power of Habit, explains that we don't really control our lives. Habits do. The bad news? If you're not paying attention, they'll keep driving you down the same old road. But the good news? Once you understand how habits work, you can take the wheel and change not just a single day, but your entire life. And that's the journey this book opens up. How one small habit can transform your health, your career, your finances, and even your future. If you want to learn how to take back control from unconscious habits, hit like and subscribe, because this journey of change is only just beginning. Part 1. The Habit Loop, the brain's automatic pilot. Have you ever wondered why you keep doing things you know are bad for you over and over again? Like after lunch, your hand almost automatically reaches for a cigarette, even though you've promised yourself hundreds of times, "I'll quit." Or at night, you plan to go to bed early, but somehow, the moment your head hits the pillow, your hand unlocks the phone and you're scrolling until 2 a.m. Charles Duhigg explains that this isn't because you're weak, it's because your brain is running a powerful system, the habit loop. It has 3 parts: cue, routine, reward. A cue triggers the behavior, the routine kicks in, and then you get a reward that your brain remembers and craves again and again.
For example, after lunch, the cue appears. The routine is lighting up a cigarette. The reward, that relaxing, stress-relieving sensation. The brain doesn't actually remember the cigarette itself. It remembers the feeling of relief, and that's what locks the habit in place. Take another case. A young office worker in New York shared that every afternoon he bought a soda from the vending machine. He thought he was addicted to sugar, but when he replaced soda with a quick 5-minute walk and a chat with a coworker, he realized what he was really craving wasn't sugar at all. It was a social break. The reward was connection, not the drink. Once he understood this, it became easier to swap soda for healthier options without feeling deprived. Here's the fascinating part. Once a habit forms, your brain switches to autopilot. The basal ganglia, the brain's habit center, takes over. This helps conserve energy, but it also makes habits hard to break. That's why pure willpower often fails. You can't fight the system with brute force forever. You have to reprogram the loop. Keep the cue, keep the reward, but change the routine. For instance, if you stay up late because of your phone, the cue might be boredom or anxiety as you lie in bed. The reward you're really seeking is escape from that emptiness. Once you see this, you can swap the routine. Maybe listen to a short podcast, or write down the 3 things that worried you most that day. The brain still gets its reward, emotional release, but the routine is healthier. As Duhigg emphasizes in The Power of Habit, you don't have to destroy a habit, you just have to replace it. The brain is a remarkable machine, but it doesn't care about good or bad. It only repeats what gets rewarded. So ask yourself honestly, how many of your daily actions are habits you don't even notice? And if all it takes is changing the routine while keeping the same reward, couldn't you rewrite your entire lifestyle? Part 2. Keystone Habits. The key to big change. Not all habits are created equal. Charles Duhigg calls certain habits keystone habits, the ones that act like the first domino. When they fall, they trigger a chain reaction that reshapes other parts of your life. And here's the magic. By focusing on just one keystone habit, you can change your entire life. The clearest example is exercise. When a man decides to jog 3 times a week, he doesn't just improve his health. He naturally starts eating better, because after a run, his body simply can't handle junk food the same way. He sleeps more soundly as his biological clock resets. And most importantly, he becomes more disciplined at work, because the thought, "I already conquered my run this morning," gives him the confidence to tackle challenges throughout the day. One U.S. study found that people who exercise regularly also tend to manage their finances better. At first glance, it seems unrelated, but when you learn discipline with your body, you also learn discipline with your wallet. That's the ripple effect of a keystone habit. Or, take a more familiar example, family dinner. A busy father, after years of working late, decides to make it a priority to have dinner with his wife and kids at least 4 nights a week. At first, it seems like a small decision, but over time, that habit strengthens family bonds, boosts his children's academic performance, and even helps him manage stress better because he has a pause point built into his day. One small change, but it triggers a cascade of benefits. And sometimes, a keystone habit can start from something incredibly simple, like listening to an audiobook summary on this channel every day. At first, maybe you're just listening to kill time, but gradually, it becomes a habit that feeds your mind with positive ideas. From there, you begin to think differently about money, about work, and eventually, you start acting differently in real life. A small shift in how you consume knowledge can ripple out into every area of your life. This shows that you don't have to change everything at once. The secret is finding that first domino. It might be waking up 30 minutes earlier to read. It might be writing down your expenses each day.
or as simple as making your bed every morning. What matters is not the size of the habit, but its power to influence. Once you push over the first domino, the whole line starts to fall. So the real question is, in your life, what is the keystone habit waiting to be awakened?
Part 3. Changing habits. Not erased, just replaced. One of Charles Duhigg's most important findings is this: habits can't be completely erased. Once a habit loop is formed in the brain, it never truly disappears. It just lies dormant, waiting to be triggered again. That's why so many people quit smoking for months, even years, only to pick up a cigarette again after one stressful day or a party with friends. But here's the good news. While you can't erase a habit, you can replace it. The brain cares about the reward, the feeling you get at the end, not the action you take to get there. If you keep the same cue and reward, but swap out the routine, the loop still works, only now in a healthier way. Imagine this. A man stops at a bar after work for a few drinks. The cue is the end of a long, stressful day. The reward is relaxation and social connection. If he tries to cut it out completely, he feels empty, deprived, and eventually slips back into the old habit. But if he replaces the routine with going to the gym with friends or joining a sports class, the cue is still end of the workday, the reward is still stress relief and social connection, but the routine is healthier. Here's another example. Someone stays up late every night binge watching Netflix. The cue is boredom or anxiety when lying in bed. The reward is temporary escape from pressure. If they swap the routine for listening to an audiobook, say one of the book summaries on this channel, the brain still gets the reward of stress relief and distraction, but in a way that promotes deeper sleep and feeds the mind instead of draining energy. This explains why so many successful recovery programs in the US, from Alcoholics Anonymous to smoking cessation clinics, don't just tell people to stop. They build environments, communities, and replacement actions. They don't try to delete the loop, they reprogram it. As Duhigg emphasizes, changing habits isn't a battle against yourself. It's the art of redesigning the loop. When you understand the cue and identify the reward, you hold the key to swap the routine. And in doing so, you turn an old, limiting loop into a new one that elevates your life. The conclusion is clear. Changing habits isn't about erasing the past. It's about rewriting the future with new choices inside the same old framework. Part 4. Belief, the key to lasting change. Charles Duhigg emphasizes that habits only become truly sustainable when we believe we can change. Willpower can get you started, but belief is what keeps you going all the way. Studies on addiction recovery show that people don't overcome temptation purely through iron discipline. They succeed because they believe in something bigger, a higher purpose, a better version of themselves waiting ahead. That belief might come from faith, from community, or from a deeply personal commitment that cannot be shaken. For many American men, real transformation happens when a new habit is tied to an identity greater than themselves. A father may quit smoking not just for his health, but because he wants his children to grow up without cigarette smoke in the house. A veteran may train for a marathon not just for fitness, but because he believes he's proving to himself and his comrades that discipline lives on. Belief turns repeated actions into part of who you are. It shifts your language from "I'm trying to quit smoking" to "I don't smoke." From "I'm testing out running" to "I'm a runner." And this principle also applies to personal finance. Many American men grow up with limiting beliefs. "I'll never be good with money. Investing is only for the rich." They stay trapped in cycles of spending, debt, and stress, simply because, deep down, they don't believe change is possible. But when someone starts self-educating, reading finance books, listening to audiobooks, shifting their mindset from spend now
to invest for the future, something begins to change. At first, it's just a small action, opening a book, jotting down a new concept, setting aside $50 a week. But after a few months, a new belief forms. I can control my money. I can build financial freedom. And from that belief, habits like budgeting, consistent investing, and continuous learning begin to take root. Picture a man drowning in credit card debt. The day he writes his first budget, nothing looks different. But when he believes he is capable of living differently, that belief keeps him tracking expenses, cutting waste, and studying every day. The result? A few years later, he's debt-free, investing, and most importantly, he's a new man, one who knows he has the power to change. Belief doesn't just turn actions into habits, it turns habits into identity. From I'm trying to save money to I'm someone who manages money wisely. From I want to learn investing to I'm an investor, growing every day. That's the difference between temporary change and lasting transformation. Because when you truly believe you are worthy of wealth and capable of achieving it, you begin to act like a wealthy person, day by day, one small habit at a time.
Part 5. Habits in Organizations and Society. Charles Duhigg points out that habits don't just exist within individuals. They're woven into the culture of organizations and even entire societies. We often think companies run on strategy or technology, but in reality, it's collective habits that form the backbone of success or failure. Take Starbucks, for example. Everyone knows Starbucks doesn't just sell coffee, they sell the service experience. But how can hundreds of thousands of employees across the US consistently greet customers, handle complaints, and smile even when someone yells at them? The answer lies in organizational habits. Starbucks trains employees not only in how to make drinks, but also in how to respond habitually in stressful situations. When a customer complains, staff are taught not to react emotionally, but to follow cue, routine, reward. The cue is the complaint, the routine is a calm response following a set process, and the reward is the pride of turning an angry customer into a satisfied one. Over time, this habit has made Starbucks a global symbol of customer service. Or consider the story of Alcoa, the American aluminum giant. When CEO Paul O'Neill took over, he didn't start with profits or revenue. He focused on one single habit: workplace safety. He required the entire company to adopt the reflex of reporting incidents immediately, no matter how small. At first, investors were puzzled, even disappointed, but within a few years, this safety habit sparked a wave of improvements. Productivity increased, employee morale strengthened, and Alcoa's profits skyrocketed. One small habit, scaled across an organization, transformed an entire corporation. On an even larger scale, look at American society. The civil rights movement of the 1960s didn't succeed only because of powerful speeches. It succeeded because millions of Americans practiced the shared habits of peaceful protest, prayer, and repeated collective action. Those habits turned isolated acts of defiance into an unstoppable social movement. These examples show us that when personal habits expand into collective habits, their power goes far beyond one individual life. They can reshape organizations, even entire nations. So here's the question. If habits can turn an employee into a brand ambassador, a company into a billion-dollar giant, and a movement into a revolution, what habits are shaping your family, your community, and the nation you live in today? Part 6. Personal Power. You can rewrite your loop. Charles Duhigg leaves us with a powerful message. Habits are not destiny. They're simply loops repeated so often that they become unconscious. And if they can be created, they can also be rewritten. This means you are not bound forever to staying up late, overreading, or procrastinating. You don't need to wait for some perfect moment to start. All you need is to recognize the old loop, replace one small link, and patiently repeat it each day.
Change can begin in the most ordinary places, in how you react to stress, how you face loneliness, or what you choose to do at the end of a long day. But none of it becomes real unless you believe. Believe that you have the right to change. Believe that you can fail today and try again tomorrow. Believe that every small step, no matter how trivial it feels, is quietly shaping a new version of you, stronger, wiser, freer. The real question is, do you want to live as a prisoner of your old habits or as the author of your own story? Habits have the power to shape your life, and you, and only you, hold the power to shape your habits. If this message resonates with you, hit like and subscribe to keep walking this journey together of self-growth, of financial transformation, of rewriting how we live. Because who knows, one video, one idea, one small decision you make today could become the new loop that leads you to an entirely different life.
Have you ever wondered why you're always busy all day, running from one task to another, yet by the end of the day, it feels like nothing really moved forward? You work hard, you check off your entire to-do list, but when you look back, your career feels stuck, your relationships lack depth, and you're left completely drained. The truth is, many of us are living on autopilot instead of truly steering our own lives. Stephen R. Covey spent decades researching and distilled it all into the 7 habits, powerful practices that, if applied, won't just make you more effective at work, but will also give you a more balanced, meaningful, and fulfilling life. These aren't quick tips or trendy hacks. They're timeless principles that have transformed millions of lives around the world. If you're ready to stop running in circles and start living aligned with your values and goals, then this video is exactly for you. And before we begin exploring the 7 habits, make sure to hit like and follow the channel so I can keep bringing you more life-changing books. Habit 1. Be proactive. Take initiative in everything you do. Stephen Covey emphasizes that life is not defined by our circumstances, but how we respond to them. Proactive people focus on what they can control instead of complaining or blaming what's beyond their reach. This is one of the key turning points of maturity. Rather than being shaped by the environment, you take ownership and steer your own life. Think of 2 kinds of people. One loses their job and spends months complaining about the bad economy, blaming the government, and waiting for things to change. The other also loses their job, but instead of sulking, they learn new skills, build connections, or start a personal project. A few months later, they not only land a better job, but also grow stronger because they discovered they could change their own situation. A perfect real-life example is Covey Timeless, the Italian-Senegalese creator. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he lost his factory job. Instead of complaining or waiting for help, Covey picked up his cheap phone and started making TikTok videos. With nothing but humor, creativity, and a deadpan expression, he poked fun at overly complicated life hacks by showing the simplest solutions. No fancy gear, no words, just initiative. Today, Covey has become one of the most followed creators on TikTok, earning millions through his personal brand. The pandemic revealed a clear difference between 2 groups of people, those who sat and waited, and those who turned adversity into opportunity. Covey calls this the circle of influence, focusing on what you can do instead of stressing over what you can't. You can't stop the storm, but you can choose to build a boat to sail through it. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey says that each of us lives life twice, once in our imagination and once in reality. The problem is, most people live only reactively, letting life carry them without a clear direction. They climb the career ladder as fast as they can, only to realize when they reach the top that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Covey encourages us to begin with a clear picture of our ultimate destination in mind. Imagine this: at your own funeral, how do you want people to remember you? As someone successful but cold and distant, or as someone who lived fully, gave generously, and left behind love? This may sound heavy, but it forces us to face the truth. Real success isn't just about money, it's about legacy, values, and relationships. Take Steve Jobs as an example.
He once shared that he thought about death every single day. For him, remembering that life is short was the most powerful motivator to live authentically, on his terms, not by others' expectations. That mindset gave him the courage to drop out of college, to start a company, to fail, and ultimately to create Apple, a company that changed the world. Another example is found in many U.S. veterans. After leaving the military, some dedicate their lives to charities, supporting soldiers' families, and giving back to their communities. For them, success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about making sure their end is tied to a legacy of service and contribution. Covey's point is clear. If we don't define our end for ourselves, we'll easily get trapped chasing society's definitions of success, money, status, recognition, only to realize too late that we missed what truly matters. But once we know our ultimate destination, every daily decision, our work, our relationships, even how we spend our time becomes purposeful and deeply meaningful.
Habit 3. Put first things first. Prioritize what truly matters. If habit 2 teaches us to define our ultimate destination, then habit 3 is about turning that vision into reality by managing our time and energy wisely. Stephen Covey points out that most people get trapped in the cycle of chasing things that feel urgent but aren't truly important, constantly checking emails, scrolling social media, or rushing to meet deadlines. Meanwhile, the things that really matter, our health, our family, personal growth, long-term projects, often get pushed aside. One day, we look back and realize we've been busy but not building a meaningful life. Covey illustrates this with his famous time management matrix, which divides activities into 4 categories. 1. Important and urgent. Tasks you can't postpone, like rushing to the ER during a heart attack or submitting a major work deadline due in a few hours. These must be handled immediately to avoid serious consequences. 2. Important but not urgent. This is the golden zone for growth. Things like exercising regularly to prevent illness, spending an hour each day reading to expand your knowledge, or intentionally sitting down to talk with your kids to strengthen your bond. No one forces you to do these right away, but neglecting them over time leads to huge regrets. 3. Not important but urgent. The most common trap. Constantly answering trivial work messages, sitting through endless unproductive meetings, or picking up every phone call that interrupts your focus. These feel urgent, but bring very little real value. 4. Not important and not urgent. The black hole of wasted time. Scrolling TikTok or Instagram for hours, binge-watching Netflix late into the night, or gaming for hours without a purpose. These don't move you closer to any goal. They only offer short-term distraction. Take Warren Buffett, one of the world's greatest investors. He famously said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." Buffett spends most of his day reading, studying businesses, and thinking deeply, activities that aren't urgent but are absolutely crucial for making the right investment decisions. Or consider Serena Williams, the legendary American tennis champion. Instead of letting media appearances or sponsorships control her schedule, she always prioritized training, rest, and family time. By focusing on what truly mattered rather than being scattered by short-term opportunities, she sustained a world-class career for over 2 decades. Covey's message is clear. You only have 24 hours a day. You can't do everything, but you can choose your priorities. When you consistently put the truly important things first, your health, your relationships, your growth, your long-term goals, your daily life begins to align with the destination you defined in Habit 2. Habit 4. Think win-win, a mindset of mutual benefit. Stephen Covey teaches us that one of the core principles of building strong relationships and long-term success is the win-win mindset.
Instead of approaching life with the belief that for me to win, you must lose, win-win means finding ways for both sides to benefit. Because in reality, a win-lose approach only creates competition, tension, and erodes trust. On the other hand, win-win opens the door to lasting partnerships, where both sides want to continue working together and growing. Think about buying a car. If your only goal is to bargain down to the lowest price, the dealer might reluctantly agree, but they'll walk away feeling cheated, and they won't want to work with you again. But if both sides find common ground, you get a fair deal, and they still earn enough to sustain their service, both leave the table satisfied. That's win-win. A clearer example is the relationship between employers and employees. A company that only focuses on maximizing profits by underpaying workers and draining them for short-term gain may grow quickly at first, but eventually employees leave, the brand loses trust, and the company pays the price. In contrast, companies like Costco and Trader Joe's, known for paying fair wages and creating positive work environments, have shown that when employees are treated well, they serve customers better, and the company thrives in the long run. Win-win isn't just for business. It applies to families and everyday life, too. Imagine a couple arguing about dinner. One wants pizza, the other wants sushi. Instead of fighting until one gives in, they choose a global buffet where both can enjoy what they like. Simple, but that's the spirit. Finding solutions where both sides walk away happy rather than one winning at the other's expense. Covey stresses that win-win doesn't always mean splitting things 50-50. It means both sides feel respected, heard, and satisfied with the outcome. When you approach relationships, whether at work, in marriage, or with friends, with a win-win spirit, you're planting seeds of trust, collaboration, and long-term success. The takeaway is this: the world isn't a fixed pie where your gain means my loss. When we choose to collaborate and build together, we can grow the pie bigger, so there's more for everyone. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. In most of our daily conversations, we don't really listen. We simply wait for our turn to respond. Imagine when a friend shares their struggles. Often our mind is already crafting an answer, maybe even a lecture. Stephen Covey calls this listening to reply, not listening to understand. And that, he says, is the single biggest barrier to genuine communication, whether in families, friendships, or workplaces. Covey's principle is simple but powerful. If you want others to listen to you, you must first learn to truly listen to them. Real listening means stepping into their shoes, feeling with your heart, not just your ears. When you do this, you create a safe space where people feel understood. And only when they feel understood are they ready to open up and listen in return. Take a parent-teen example. A teenager comes home upset and says, "I hate school." Most parents instantly react, "You need to try harder, school is for your future." But to the teen, that feels like their emotions are being dismissed. Instead, imagine the parent pausing and saying, "Sounds like you had a really tough day at school. What's been the hardest part at school?" That kind of response invites the child to open up, share more deeply, and eventually become receptive to advice because they first felt heard. In business, listening is just as powerful. Steve Jobs once said Apple succeeded not by telling customers what they should want, but by listening and understanding their unspoken needs. Another example is therapists in the US. Their main role isn't to talk, but to listen empathetically, so patients feel understood. From that space of understanding, real change can begin. Covey emphasizes that true listening isn't just hearing words, it's empathetic listening. It means setting aside your own judgments, resisting the urge to interrupt with "me too," and giving full attention to the other person's world. When you do this, you build trust, and your relationships go deeper than any argument ever could. The takeaway is this: if you want to influence others, first let them feel that you genuinely understand them.
When you plant the seed of understanding, you'll harvest understanding in return. And at that point, communication is no longer a battle. It becomes a bridge.
Habit 6. Synergize, the power of collaboration. Stephen Covey says 1 + 1 can be greater than 2. That's the essence of synergy, the power of combining strengths. When people with different skills, perspectives, and experiences come together, the results can far exceed what any individual could achieve alone. The problem is, most of us fear differences. We prefer working with people who think like us, act like us, and agree with us. But Covey emphasizes that differences, whether in experience, personality, or perspective, are exactly what spark breakthroughs. Take Apple as an example. The iPhone wasn't created by hardware engineers alone or by software developers alone. It came from the synergy of designers who shaped a beautiful user experience, engineers who built powerful technology, and marketers who infused the brand with meaning. The result wasn't just a useful product, it reshaped the behavior of billions of people worldwide. Or look at modern medicine. Collaboration across disciplines is saving millions of lives. Cardiologists, nutritionists, data scientists, and AI engineers are working together to build systems that can predict diseases earlier than ever before. No single specialty could achieve this level of impact on its own. Covey introduces a key mindset: respecting differences. Instead of seeing differences as a threat, see them as opportunities to learn. Someone who sees the world differently from you isn't your opponent. They're the one who can reveal blind spots you'd never notice. When you truly listen, stay open, and combine unique strengths, you create synergy, where the outcome is greater than the sum of the parts. This principle holds true in everyday life as well. Think of a marriage. The husband might be practical, while the wife is more of a dreamer. If they clash, it leads to arguments. But if they embrace their differences, they complement each other. The husband brings inspiration, the wife brings balance, and together they create a stronger family. Covey's message is clear. Synergy doesn't happen by accident. It grows out of trust, listening, and mutual respect. When you stop trying to win every debate and instead open yourself to differences, you'll discover creative solutions you could never have found alone. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. Renew yourself. Stephen Covey tells a famous story. A man was sawing down a tree for hours. He was exhausted, dripping with sweat, but the tree still wouldn't fall. A passerby said, "Why don't you stop for a moment and sharpen your saw? It's too dull." The man replied, "I'm too busy. I don't have time to sharpen it. I need to finish cutting this tree." This is the reality for many of us. We work tirelessly, chasing deadlines, stressing over finances, trying to get everything done, but we forget the most important thing: renewing ourselves. A dull saw makes the work twice as hard. But if you pause to sharpen it, everything becomes easier and more effective. Covey breaks this renewal into 4 key dimensions. Physical, taking care of your body through exercise, healthy eating, and quality rest. Many top CEOs, from Jeff Bezos to Tim Cook, prioritize sleep and fitness. Bezos once said, "I get 8 hours of sleep so I can make better decisions." A healthy body gives you the energy to pursue your goals. Mental, strengthening your mind through learning, reading, and expanding knowledge. Bill Gates practices something he calls Think Week, a week away from work dedicated entirely to reading and reflection. That's how he sharpens the saw mentally, sparking ideas that transformed Microsoft. Spiritual, nurturing your values and connecting with something greater than yourself. For some, it's meditation or prayer. For others, volunteer work or simply quiet reflection. This spiritual renewal helps you stay centered and resilient in the face of challenges. Social and emotional.
building strong, supportive relationships with family, friends, and community. No one can sustain high performance in isolation. On the other hand, a hug from a loved one or an honest conversation can provide the fuel to keep going. Covey stresses that balance across all 4 areas is the key to sustainable effectiveness. If you only focus on work and ignore your health, you'll burn out. If you only chase money and neglect relationships, you'll succeed in loneliness. And if you pursue material success but forget the spiritual, you'll always feel empty inside. A relatable example. After the COVID-19 pandemic, many Americans realized they had been too busy cutting trees without ever sharpening their saw. Millions left their stressful 9-to-5 jobs to prioritize health, family, and experiences that bring true happiness. This shows that sharpening the saw isn't just a habit. It's a wise choice for a balanced and sustainable life. Covey's final message is this: success doesn't come from running faster or working harder. It comes from pausing, renewing, and sharpening yourself, so every step you take is stronger, smarter, and more meaningful. Life is like a long journey. Many people rush forward only to realize at the end that they've been heading in the wrong direction. The 7 habits Stephen Covey shares are not quick tips for success. They're a roadmap, a guide to help you live proactively, set clear goals, prioritize what matters most, build win-win relationships, listen deeply, collaborate effectively, and ultimately, renew yourself. If you stay committed to practicing these habits, not only will your work improve, but your relationships, your mindset, and your entire life will be elevated. And one day you'll realize true success isn't about achieving more. It's about becoming a better version of yourself day by day. So pause for a moment, look within, and ask yourself, which of these 7 habits should I start working on today? Because every great journey begins with a single step. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and follow the channel so we can explore more life-changing books together. And share it with your loved ones, because sometimes just one simple habit can transform an entire life.
Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a loop? You switch jobs, but the same old boredom creeps back in. You try to change your habits, but after a couple of weeks, everything slips back to the way it was. You try to fix problems in your family, at work, with your finances, but somehow they keep coming back, just wearing a different mask. Dan Heath calls this the firefighting trap. We keep rushing to put out flames, but almost no one stops to ask, why do these fires keep breaking out in the first place? And because of that, we end up repeating the same failures, just in different forms. The book, Reset: How to Change What's Not Working, isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter. It shows us how to stop patching problems and start redesigning the system so that real change can finally happen. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I try so hard but still can't escape the same old issues, then this video is for you. And if you'd like to join me in learning the mindsets and strategies that can improve your finances, your career, and your life, make sure to hit like and subscribe. That way you won't miss future videos and you'll also help this channel reach more people. Part 1. The Firefighting Trap: Why We Fix Symptoms Instead of Roots. Dan Heath opens with the familiar image. We're like firefighters, constantly rushing from one alarm to the next. One problem flares up, then another and another. In this endless cycle, most of us believe we're working hard, staying busy, even being productive. But in reality, we're stuck in the same exhausting game, putting out fires without ever finding what's causing them. He calls this the firefighting trap. It's what happens when we focus too much on solving the immediate crisis without asking the deeper question, what created this problem in the first place? Take a look at everyday life. In a company, when sales drop, the first reaction is usually to roll out discounts or ramp up advertising. But very few people stop to ask, is our product really a fit for our customers? Are we addressing the market's true needs? Sales may rise briefly, but a few months later, they fall right back down.
Or think about personal finance. The average American who falls into credit card debt often responds by making minimum payments or taking out another loan to cover the old one. That eases the pain for the moment, but the root problem, spending more than they earn, remains. The result? The debt spiral tightens, just under a different bank's name. We fall into this trap because firefighting gives us the instant rush of "I did something." When you put out a fire, when you make a payment, when you handle a crisis at work, your brain rewards you with a sense of accomplishment. But it's only a temporary painkiller. The root cause is still there, waiting to erupt again, often stronger than before. Dan Heath makes a crucial point. Most organizations, businesses, and even individuals stay trapped in this loop because they lack the time or courage for long-term thinking. The pressure of short-term results from bosses, customers, bills pushes us to patch problems instead of redesigning the system. If you look back at your own life, you'll probably see many firefighting traps too. A relationship that breaks down again and again. You apologize, make up, but the same arguments return. Declining health. You take more painkillers instead of changing your lifestyle. A stressful job. You just push through until the weekend, then come back to the same cycle of burnout. The danger of the firefighting trap is this. It makes us believe we're making progress, when in fact we're only repeating ourselves. And unless we wake up, an entire lifetime can slip away in putting out fires without ever asking the most important question: how can I stop the fire from breaking out in the first place?
Part 2. Redesigning the system. People respond to their environment. One of Dan Heath's core ideas is this: people don't act in a vacuum. We react to our environment, to the signals the system sends us. That means lasting behavior change doesn't come from scolding, motivating, or lecturing people. It comes from redesigning the system itself. Take health as an example. In the US, obesity has long been one of the biggest public health issues. For years, the government, doctors, even media campaigns have told people to eat healthier and exercise more. But those messages have little impact because the surrounding system pushes them in the opposite direction. In the supermarket, candy and snacks are placed right at the checkout, where impulse is strongest. At work, fast food is the quickest, cheapest option, available on nearly every corner. On TV, hundreds of ads for soda and pizza flash across the screen. No wonder the average American finds it hard to resist. The environment is designed for them to fail. Heath argues, instead of telling people to be stronger, we should redesign the environment. For example, when schools replaced soda with water and low-sugar milk in cafeterias, the rate of sugary drink consumption dropped dramatically. Or when some Silicon Valley companies placed fruits and vegetables at the start of the cafeteria line while pizza and burgers were pushed to the back, employees naturally made healthier choices. Behavior changed not because people suddenly had more willpower, but because the environment nudged them in the right direction. This principle doesn't just apply to health, it applies to personal finance too. Americans are often criticized for not saving enough. But look at the system. When you get your paycheck, the default is that 100% goes into your checking account, where it's easiest to spend. To save, you have to make a manual transfer, which requires effort and willpower. But when companies introduced automatic paycheck deductions into 401k retirement accounts, savings rates skyrocketed. Not because employees suddenly transformed, but because the system made saving the default. Another example comes from traffic safety. In many U.S. cities, accidents happen frequently because of speeding. When police officers stand on the road handing out tickets, crashes drop temporarily but soon spike again. That's firefighting. But when cities installed speed bumps in front of schools and hospitals, accident rates fell for the long term. Why? Because the system forced behavior change. Dan Heath's message is clear. If you want a different result, don't just try to change people, change their environment. Humans are easily influenced, easily carried by the current. If the current is designed well, we'll flow in the right direction almost automatically. Now, take a look at yourself. If you're constantly exhausted in the mornings, maybe it's not because you're weak, but because you keep your phone by your bed, making it far too easy to scroll until 1 or 2 a.m. If you find yourself spending recklessly, it may not be that you lack discipline, but that you're bombarded daily with hundreds of personalized ads, making shopping just one click away.
We can't keep blaming people, because people, by nature, act according to their environment. And if we want real change, the answer isn't scolding, it's redesigning the system around them. Part 3. The art of prevention. Stop problems at the start, instead of fixing them later. Dan Heath makes a powerful point. Prevention is always cheaper, more effective, and more humane than firefighting. The problem is, most of us invest in the opposite, pouring mountains of money, time, and effort into cleaning up after disasters instead of investing up front to keep them from happening in the first place. Take American healthcare as an example. Every year, millions of ER visits are linked to heart disease, diabetes, or obesity. Treating these conditions costs hundreds of billions of dollars annually, yet much of it could be prevented with healthier diets, regular exercise, and routine checkups. A single heart surgery can cost over $100,000, while a community program promoting healthy eating costs only a fraction of that. The issue is, society rarely acts until the crisis has already exploded. Heath calls this the fire trap. When the house is burning, everyone rushes to put out the flames, but few are willing to invest in checking the wiring, replacing old cables, or installing smoke alarms, the very things that could have prevented the fire in the first place. Another example. Crime in American neighborhoods. City governments often focus on arrests, heavier policing, or cracking down on gangs after crime spikes. But research shows that investing in after-school programs, community playgrounds, and support for single parents has a far greater impact on reducing crime. Why? Because those programs prevent kids from turning to crime in the first place instead of patching up the damage after it's done. Prevention isn't just true at the societal level, it applies to personal life too. Many Americans fall into the credit card debt spiral. They only scramble to fix things once balances are out of control and interest is piling up. But if from the start they set clear spending rules and automatically funneled a portion of income into savings, the debt spiral never would have formed. As Warren Buffett once said, a snowball can turn into a giant snowball if it rolls in the right direction early. What holds people back from prevention, Heath explains, is human psychology. We hate spending money on problems that haven't happened yet. Americans will easily drop $500 to fix a car after it breaks down, but hesitate to spend $50 on regular maintenance. Companies will spend millions managing a PR crisis, but balk at spending a few thousand on a content review team. We're wired to focus on the present while discounting future risks. Heath points out that successful systems are built with prevention baked in. For instance, U.S. aviation is one of the safest industries in the world, not because accidents never happen, but because every small incident triggers a full review. Processes are updated so the same mistake never repeats. The cost of prevention is small, but the payoff is massive. And on a personal level, the lesson is just as close to home. Spending a few hours on the weekend to plan your finances, track expenses, and build an emergency fund can save you months of anxiety if you suddenly lose your job. Spending 30 minutes a day exercising can save you decades of battling chronic illness. Heath asked the question directly, do you want to invest in prevention now or pay 10 times the price for the consequences later? That's the art of prevention, stopping problems at the start instead of patching them up at the end.
Part 4. Reset in Work and Personal Life. Dan Heath emphasizes something important. Reset isn't just for large organizations or complex systems. It's a survival skill for each of us as individuals. Many Americans are stuck in a familiar loop. Work overload, stress piling up, then blowing off steam with shopping, binge-watching Netflix, or scrolling TikTok for hours. But soon the loop restarts. Work is still stressful, the bank account keeps shrinking, and the sense of being stuck doesn't go away. The problem is they're treating the symptoms, not the cause. Reset at a personal level means pausing, reflecting, and redesigning how you operate. Take work, for example. Countless office workers in America spend more than 8 hours a day at their desks, but most of their time is stolen by endless emails, pointless meetings, or constant pings from chat apps. They try working late to catch up, but the harder they push, the more burnt out they feel. Instead of firefighting, Heath suggests a reset. Redesign the work environment.
That could mean carving out distraction-free time for deep work, or setting up a no-meeting day with the team so everyone actually has space to get quality work done. In personal life, reset is just as critical. Millions of Americans are buried in credit card debt, but instead of changing spending habits, they shuffle balances, open new cards, or extend credit limits, only to sink deeper. A true reset isn't finding another patch, but sitting down to create a new budget, automating savings, and cutting out unnecessary spending. There's also a powerful example from those who've gone through a midlife crisis. Many realize they've been chasing society's definition of success for too long. Bigger houses, nicer cars, fancier job titles, and yet one day it feels empty. Those who choose to reset often begin by asking the root question, what really matters to me? Some cut back hours to spend more time with their kids. Others switch careers to something they love, even if it pays less. What they gain, however, is peace of mind, something they never had before. Heath stresses reset doesn't mean scrapping everything and starting over from zero. It can be as simple as a small adjustment with lasting impact, like adjusting the steering wheel while driving. If you ignore a tiny drift, you'll end up miles off course. But if you catch it early and reset, you'll stay on track. Research on happiness in the US shows the same truth. People who regularly reset their habits by fixing their sleep schedule, making family dinners a routine instead of eating in front of a screen, or swapping 30 minutes of social media for a walk outside, report much higher life satisfaction. The question Heath leaves us with is this: are you living by habit or by choice? Are you letting life sweep you along, or are you willing to hit reset and design it the way you want? In the end, reset doesn't just mean improving life. It's about taking back control of it. Part 5. The biggest lesson. Change the structure to change the trajectory. Dan Health emphasizes this point. Real change doesn't come from doubling down on effort within an old system. It only happens when we change the structure of that system. Otherwise, every improvement is just patchwork. Take this example. An American company wants to improve employee health. The typical response is to send motivational emails, hand out gym coupons, or host wellness workshops. But Heath points out that these measures rarely create lasting results. Why? Because the structure stays the same. Employees are still glued to their desks for 8 hours, still surrounded by conference rooms stacked with pastries and soda, still crushed by deadlines that leave no time for exercise. To drive real change, the company must redesign its work structure, build offices with walkable spaces, implement stand-up meetings to reduce sitting, or simply allow short movement breaks during the day. When the structure changes, behavior follows. The same applies at the societal level. For decades, the U.S. poured billions into anti-smoking campaigns, warning posters, TV commercials, even graphic labels on cigarette packs. But the real turning point didn't come from messaging, it came from new structures. Significantly raising cigarette taxes, banning smoking in public spaces, and restricting tobacco advertising. These structural shifts were what drove smoking rates down decade after decade. On a personal level, we often get stuck in what Heath calls the willpower loop. For example, you want to save money, but online shopping habits are too strong. If you rely on willpower alone, you'll burn out after a few weeks and slip back into old patterns. But if you change the structure, say by automatically transferring 10% of your paycheck into savings, or by deleting shopping apps from your phone, you're no longer just trying to run faster on the same tracks. You're laying down new tracks altogether. Heath's biggest lesson in Reset is this: don't rely on changing behavior alone. Change the environment. Change the structure so that new behaviors become easy and natural. The same principle applies to economies. If governments only pump money into bailouts during crises without changing how the system actually operates, the same crises will soon repeat. To shift the trajectory, you need deep reform, new regulations, new governments, and new systems of risk control. For individuals, structural change can be as simple as redesigning your daily schedule, reorganizing your living space, or creating support systems, a gym buddy, a financial coach, or even an accountability partner to keep you on track. These adjustments may feel small, but they set you on a new trajectory, helping you go further without exhausting yourself. And Heath leaves us with a powerful question. Are you trying to change yourself within an old structure, or are you ready to redesign that structure and unlock an entirely new trajectory? Because if the structure doesn't change, the results never will. In the end, reset reminds us of a powerful truth. Real transformation doesn't come from working harder, but from choosing the right structure to live and work within. If you're not satisfied with your current results, don't just push yourself to run faster. Take a hard look at the track you're running on. Life only changes when we dare to change our trajectory. If this video gave you a fresh perspective, hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss future insights on mindset, money, and life. Who knows? One of the next videos might be the very reset your journey needs.
Have you ever wondered why some people are smart, talented, and hardworking, yet still get left behind? Meanwhile, others, who may not be any more capable, always seem to be liked, trusted, and given opportunities to advance. The difference isn't about IQ or degrees, it's about the ability to build relationships. In fact, studies show that more than 85% of success in both career and life comes from people skills, how you connect, communicate, and influence others. In today's video, we'll dive into timeless lessons from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, a book that has transformed the lives of millions of Americans for nearly a century. If you want to become not just skilled in your field, but also respected, appreciated, and truly heard, make sure to watch until the end. And don't forget to hit like and follow so you won't miss more life-changing books on personal growth and financial success. Part 1. The Power of Attitude. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. One of the very first and most important principles Dale Carnegie emphasizes is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. It sounds simple, but it's a mistake almost all of us make. Human instinct pushes us to judge, find faults, and assign blame. But as Carnegie points out, criticism never truly changes people. Instead, it makes them defensive, resentful, and distant. Rather than helping them improve, harsh words usually trigger pride and self-justification. The result? You lose cooperation, trust, and sometimes even friendship. Take Abraham Lincoln, for example. In his younger years, he often wrote sharp, sarcastic articles attacking others. One incident almost led to a duel that could have cost him his life. From then on, Lincoln learned to hold back his words, eventually becoming one of the most tactful and empathetic leaders in American history. We see this play out in everyday life too. Imagine an employee making a mistake at work. If the boss snaps, "This is a disaster, you've ruined everything," the employee will likely feel humiliated, discouraged, or even fearful. But if the boss takes a constructive approach, "I know you worked hard on this, but there are some adjustments we need to make. I'm confident you can handle it." The employee not only accepts the feedback, but feels motivated to do better. Carnegie wants us to recognize that a positive attitude and empathy have far more power to influence people than criticism ever will. Human beings crave recognition and respect, not judgment. And when you learn to stop criticizing, you'll find the doors to people's hearts and their cooperation open much more easily. Part 2. The secret to building goodwill. Offer honest praise and recognition. Dale Carnegie once said, "The desire for recognition is as deep as the desire for food or drink." This isn't just polite advice. It's rooted in a fundamental truth of psychology. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right after basic needs like food, water, and safety are met, the next level is love, belonging, and recognition. In other words, once people have enough to eat, they don't just want to survive, they want to be seen, valued, and appreciated. That's why one of the fastest ways to win goodwill is through praise,
but it must be genuine and sincere. Carnegie isn't talking about empty flattery. He emphasizes recognizing real effort, genuine achievements, and admirable qualities in others. When your praise is specific and authentic, it doesn't just make people happy, it inspires them to do even better. Think about it. A child who is constantly criticized will eventually lose confidence. But just one encouraging word, "I can see your handwriting is getting better every day," can spark new belief in themselves. Adults are no different. We like to think we're tougher as we grow up, but deep down, every one of us still longs for recognition. Here in the US, many top companies build an employee recognition culture. A simple thank you card, a short email of appreciation, or a public shout-out in front of the team can make employees feel that their work truly matters. Companies like Google and Costco are famous for this, and the results speak for themselves: higher performance, stronger loyalty, and a more positive workplace. Carnegie put it best: be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. This isn't just about politeness. It's about touching one of the deepest human needs, the need to feel valued. A sincere compliment has the power to change someone's day or even their entire life.
Part 3. The Art of Listening and Using Names. Dale Carnegie once said, "To be interesting, be interested." In other words, to become a great communicator, you must first learn how to listen. It sounds simple, but in reality, most of us don't really listen, we're just waiting for our turn to talk. That's why so many conversations feel shallow and fail to create real connection. Carnegie emphasized that people don't just want to be heard, they want to be understood. When you genuinely pay attention, you're silently sending a powerful message. You matter. Your story has value, and that is one of the greatest gifts you can give another human being. Another powerful skill Carnegie highlighted is the use of names. He wrote, "A person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language." Think about it. When a manager calls an employee by name instead of, "Hey you," or when a receptionist greets a guest by name, it creates an instant sense of warmth and respect. You can see this principle in everyday American life. At Starbucks, writing customers' names on coffee cups isn't just for convenience, it's a way to make the interaction more personal. At companies like Apple or Amazon, training employees to remember and use customer names is considered a key to long-term loyalty. Try this yourself. In a conversation, listen attentively, nod occasionally, and repeat the other person's name when you respond. Watch how their eyes light up. Something so small can transform a casual interaction into a genuine friendship, or turn a one-time buyer into a loyal customer. Carnegie showed us that listening more, talking less, and never forgetting someone's name, though simple, are the very foundations of lasting influence in any relationship. Part 4. Persuasion without arguing. Dale Carnegie famously said, "You can't win an argument. If you lose it, you lose it. And if you win it, you still lose it." It sounds paradoxical, but it reflects a deep truth about human nature. When people feel forced or cornered, they rarely change their minds. Instead, they feel offended, resentful, and the relationship begins to suffer. Carnegie suggests a different approach. Don't focus on proving that you're right. Instead, guide others to discover the truth for themselves. Rather than arguing head-on, listen first, ask thoughtful questions, and acknowledge the valid points in their perspective before sharing your own. This way, they won't feel attacked, and they'll far be more open to considering your point of view. You can see this clearly in the American workplace. A wise manager won't shout at an employee, "Your way is completely wrong." Instead, they might say, "That's an interesting idea. What if we tried it this way? Do you think it might work better?" The end result may be the same, but the approach fosters cooperation rather than conflict. Or think about everyday life, say a family dinner. If the topic of politics comes up, a notoriously divisive subject in the US, you're almost guaranteed not to change someone's opinion through direct argument.
But if you choose to listen, then share your perspective through personal experience, you're more likely to preserve harmony and perhaps even plant a seed of lasting change. Carnegie reminds us that the true goal of communication isn't to win or lose, it's to strengthen and sustain relationships. And the only way to do that is by mastering the art of persuasion without ever needing to argue. Part 5. Leading without creating resentment. One of the most subtle arts in how to win friends and influence people is the way Dale Carnegie teaches us to lead others. He stresses that true leadership isn't built on fear or authority, it's built on respect and encouragement. Human beings naturally dislike being publicly criticized. When confronted harshly, most people don't improve, instead they push back or quietly harbor resentment. That's why Carnegie advises, if you must give feedback, always begin with praise. Show people that their efforts are valued, that their contributions matter, then gently suggest where improvements could be made. He also highlights another key skill: assign tasks as opportunities to shine, not as orders to obey. When an employee or teammate feels trusted, they will give far more of themselves than if they feel forced. Many modern American companies practice this philosophy. For example, Google became famous for its 20% time policy, which allowed employees to spend part of their work week on passion projects. From that freedom came groundbreaking products like Gmail and Google Maps. Instead of saying, "Do what I tell you," Google encouraged employees with, "Work on what you believe matters, and we'll support you." It's a powerful example of leadership through inspiration. History offers lessons as well. Abraham Lincoln, one of America's greatest presidents, wasn't known for issuing iron-fisted commands. He was admired for his ability to listen, empathize, and unite a divided nation during the Civil War. Lincoln led with humility and compassion, earning the respect of even his fiercest political rivals. The core truth is this: leadership isn't about standing above others, it's about helping them rise to their full potential. When people feel important, they'll follow you, not because they have to, but because they want to.
Part 6. Genuine care, the key to lasting influence. Dale Carnegie reminds us that every communication technique and every persuasion strategy becomes meaningless without one essential ingredient: genuine care for people. You can praise, you can listen, you can offer clever advice, but if it's all just for your own gain, others will quickly sense the insincerity. On the other hand, when you truly care, not just in words but in actions and attitude, relationships become strong and enduring. Human beings long to be understood and valued. When someone feels that you remember their birthday, ask about their family, or simply listen with full attention in your eyes, they open up and trust begins to grow. This truth can be seen everywhere in American life. Many of the most successful CEOs aren't just skilled strategists, they're also deeply people-oriented. Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, once said he didn't run the company just to sell coffee, but to create a place where people feel connected and cared for. That philosophy turned Starbucks into a global brand, known not just for coffee, but for a sense of belonging. Or consider everyday life. A neighbor who sees you mowing your lawn might walk over with a cold beer and spend a few minutes chatting. It's a small gesture of care, but it can build long-term bonds within a community. The core message Carnegie wanted us to understand is this: lasting influence doesn't come from eloquence or authority. It comes from a heart that genuinely cares. Part 7. Lasting success, built on character, not tricks. Dale Carnegie closes his book with a powerful message. You cannot build lasting success on communication tricks or clever persuasion tactics. Those may bring short-term gains, but they quickly fade. What truly matters is your character, your kindness, sincerity, and respect for others. When character is your foundation, communication skills simply become tools to express the goodness that's already within you. Always remember, people may forget the exact words you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's why great leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and even the best friends in everyday life all share one thing in common. They care, they respect, and they build trust, not through manipulation, but through genuine character. And that's where lasting success, both in work and in relationships, will always come from. If you found the lessons from how to win friends and influence people helpful, don't forget to like this video and follow the channel so you won't miss more of the best book summaries to help you grow in both life and career.
Each rung represents a financial decision: spending, saving, investing, and finally, freedom. The problem is, most of us keep running in circles at the bottom instead of stepping onto the very first rung. Nick Maggiulli, the author of Just Keep Buying, a book that made waves in the personal finance community, has returned with an even more powerful idea: the wealth ladder. He describes it as a financial ladder anyone can climb, as long as they take the right steps. There's no magical leap that will land you at the top instantly, but nothing is stopping you from starting today. In this video, we'll break down each rung of the ladder in a clear and practical way, so wealth no longer feels out of reach. And if you'd like to keep moving forward on this journey, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next insights. Part 1. Creating Financial Breathing Room. Nick Maggiulli highlights a simple but often overlooked truth. Before you can climb any rung of the wealth ladder, you need financial breathing room. This doesn't just mean having leftover cash after expenses. It's the cushion, the flexibility that gives you options when life throws a curveball. Think about it this way. If you spend nearly every dollar you earn each month, you're walking a tightrope. Lose your job, face a health issue, or get hit with an unexpected expense, and your entire life can spiral into chaos. On the other hand, if you have breathing room, cash on hand, savings, or well-managed expenses, you're in control. Life shocks may shake you, but they won't knock you down. One study in the US found that nearly 60% of people couldn't come up with $1,000 in an emergency. That means a broken car, a surprise medical bill, or even an over-budget vacation could push them straight into credit card debt. Meanwhile, those with an emergency fund, or simply living below their means, report feeling far less stress. They know they have solid ground to stand on when problems arise, rather than panicking. Maggiulli calls this the first step on the financial ladder. You can't invest successfully, and you certainly can't dream of financial freedom without a strong foundation. Creating financial breathing room may not be glamorous, but it's like building the foundation of a house. No one sees it, but skip it, and the entire structure could collapse. Take a simple, everyday example. A middle-class American family earning $80,000 a year. If they set aside just 10%, around $8,000 annually, for an emergency fund, within a few years, they'd have a solid cushion to avoid falling into debt when setbacks happen. This breathing room won't make them rich overnight, but it's the key to moving up to the next rungs: investing, building wealth, and ultimately, freedom. In other words, creating financial breathing room means buying peace of mind before buying wealth. Part 2. Idle cash as leverage. Nick Maggiulli emphasizes a mindset many people often overlook. Idle cash isn't wasted money, it's leverage that allows you to seize opportunities. In personal finance, many Americans fall into two extremes: either leaving all their money sitting in a low-interest savings account or investing every single dollar in the market without keeping any reserves. Both approaches are risky. Why? Because markets are always volatile and opportunities often come unexpectedly. Without dry powder ready to take advantage, you'll miss those golden moments. Maggiulli shares a key principle: always keep some idle cash to take advantage of uncertainty. When crises hit, when the stock market drops sharply, or when real estate prices fall steeply, it's the people with cash on hand who can buy at bargain prices. Take 2020 for example. When the COVID pandemic broke out, US stock markets plunged. Many investors panicked and sold off their shares, but a small group with cash reserves bought more stock in strong companies like Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. Within a year, their portfolios had doubled or even tripled in value. Idle cash is like a safety parachute.
It won't make you soar higher on sunny days, but it can save your life when the storm hits. If you pour all your money into short-term investments with no cash buffer, a single unexpected shock, like losing your job or a market crash, could force you to sell in a panic. Consider another everyday example. A couple in Texas earning $100,000 a year. If they consistently set aside $20,000 as strategic reserves, then when a small real estate opportunity comes up, say a discounted apartment from a seller who needs quick cash, they can jump in immediately. Meanwhile, those without idle cash can only watch the opportunity slip away. Maggiulli calls idle cash the power of patience. It isn't wasteful, it's a weapon that keeps you in control. Because true wealth doesn't just come from investing well, but from having the ability to act at the right moment.
Part 3. Smart investing means keeping it simple. Nick Maggiulli points out one of the biggest mistakes individual investors make, believing that building wealth requires complicated investments. In reality, the opposite is true. The simpler the strategy, the more effective it often is. Most people get swept up in the flood of information. Hot stocks, crypto, real estate, corporate bonds, hedge funds, even NFTs. They think success means grabbing everything and diversifying to the extreme. But historical data shows that the simplest strategies are often the ones that deliver the most sustainable returns. Maggiulli suggests that instead of chasing every new trend, stick to core principles. Choose investments that are easy to understand. Focus on assets that have stood the test of time, like the S&P 500 index. Stay disciplined for the long term instead of constantly jumping in and out. Remember, Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, once said, "Investing doesn't require a stratospheric IQ, it just requires you to avoid dumb mistakes." He's long encouraged the average investor to simply buy low-cost index funds and hold them for the long run, rather than trying to beat the market. Here's a powerful example. Imagine a typical American investing $500 a month into an S&P 500 index fund starting in 1990. Despite the dot-com crash in 2000, the financial crisis in 2008, and the COVID crash in 2020, by today their portfolio would be worth over $1 million, all from one single strategy: simple, patient, and disciplined investing. By contrast, those who chased hot stocks, followed random social media advice, or jumped into trendy assets they didn't truly understand often ended up empty-handed. The financial markets don't reward complexity. They usually punish greed and impatience. Smart investing isn't about proving you're smarter than everyone else. It's about choosing the least risky, most effective path to achieve financial freedom. Part 4. Building skills and income. Nick Maggiulli emphasizes a powerful truth. The money you have today is simply a reflection of the skills and abilities you built in the past. To climb to the higher rungs of the wealth ladder, you can't just rely on cutting expenses or tweaking your budget. You have to increase your earning power. It sounds obvious, but many people miss this point. They'll spend hours figuring out how to save $5 with a coupon, yet won't dedicate even 30 minutes a day to learning a new skill that could boost their annual income by thousands of dollars. In his book, Maggiulli stresses that income is the fuel for your entire financial journey. Without a strong cash inflow, it's nearly impossible to invest meaningfully or build long-term wealth. And that inflow doesn't come only from your current job. It comes from your ability to adapt, learn, and create new value. Just look at today's U.S. job market. An office worker with only basic skills could be replaced by AI or automation. But someone with specialized expertise, like AI programming, data analysis, user experience design, or strategic management, will always have stronger bargaining power, higher pay, and far less risk of being left behind. And it's not just technical skills that matter. Soft skills like communication, leadership, negotiation, and networking are what set people apart. They're the difference between someone who works hard and someone who works smart.
A clear example is Jeff Bezos in his early career. He wasn't just a talented investment banker. He also immersed himself in learning about technology and the emerging internet. That unique mix of financial acumen and tech insight allowed him to spot the opportunity that became Amazon, an opportunity thousands of other bankers completely missed. Maggio calls this human leverage. As your skills become rarer and more valuable, you can turn 1 hour of work into 10 or 20 times the income of the average person. And it's this surplus income that enables you to save, invest, and climb the financial ladder faster. When you compare people who remain stuck living paycheck to paycheck with those who gradually break free, the key difference isn't in how many extra hours they work. It's in how much they invest in themselves above all else.
Part 5. Thinking in Life Stages. One of the standout points in The Wealth Ladder is Nick Maggiulli's reminder that financial strategy is never fixed. It changes with each stage of life. If you apply the same mindset at 60 that you had at 20, you'll end up locking yourself into poor decisions. In early adulthood, right after college or when you're just starting your career, the most important goal isn't buying a house or planning for retirement, it's building skills and creating a stable income. This is the time to take more risks, try new jobs, or even launch a small business. Mistakes at 25 are far cheaper than mistakes at 55. By your 30s and 40s, however, the strategy shifts. At this stage, you're balancing family responsibilities with your career. Money isn't just for yourself anymore. It's for your kids and possibly for aging parents too. Maggiulli stresses the importance of building an emergency fund and having insurance because unexpected risks, illness, job loss, or economic downturns can deeply affect the entire family. At the same time, this is when you should start investing consistently and seriously, not just saving. After 50, the mindset changes again. It's no longer about who can earn the most, but who can protect and use their wealth most wisely. Maggiulli advises focusing on the sustainability of your portfolio, not chasing risky bets. You don't have 20 or 30 years left to recover from big mistakes, so safety matters more than ever. This is also the time to think about legacy, not only the money you'll leave to your children, but also the mindset and financial knowledge you pass down. Take Warren Buffett, for example. He has often said that most of his massive wealth came after age 50, thanks to compounding and patience. Yet he never splurged just to reward himself. Instead, he maintained a simple lifestyle while preparing to donate most of his fortune to charity. His story shows how each life stage demands a different financial perspective. The key message is this: don't copy someone else's financial strategy if they're at a different stage of life. A 25-year-old aggressively saving every dollar to invest in stocks makes sense. But a 55-year-old without health insurance or an emergency fund? That's a serious mistake. Maggiulli calls this the principle of the financial ladder. You need to know which rung you're standing on and what the next step should be. Wealth isn't a single destination, it's a personal journey that shifts with every stage of life. Part 6. Habits matter more than the perfect strategy. Many of us are obsessed with finding the perfect financial strategy. Which stock should I buy? Should I invest in gold, Bitcoin, or chase the highest yielding ETF? But Nick Maggiulli emphasizes this truth. Long-term wealth isn't built on the perfect strategy. It's built on the habits you can stick with every day. Picture this. One person chooses the right investment strategy, but quits after a few months because they're too busy, too tired, or lose confidence. Meanwhile, another person follows a simple plan, say regularly investing in an S&P 500 index fund, and keeps at it for 10 or 20 years. Who ends up wealthier? Clearly, the one with consistent habits, not the one chasing the perfect plan. Maggiulli gives a down-to-earth comparison. It's like exercising. You don't need a complicated workout program.
Walking 30 minutes a day for 10 years will make you far healthier than someone constantly switching to the latest miracle gym routine they only stick with for a few weeks. Finance works the same way. Habits matter more than strategies. One of the most important habits highlighted in The Wealth Ladder is automation. When you set up automatic transfers to savings or investments as soon as your paycheck arrives, you remove willpower and emotions from the equation. Your money works for you even when you're not paying attention. Majuli also stresses the habit of continuous learning. The financial world constantly shifts. New technologies, new investment trends, new policies. If you don't make a habit of staying informed, you'll fall behind, even if your old strategy once worked well. The key is this: don't chase perfection, chase consistency. An average strategy applied steadily will always outperform a brilliant strategy abandoned after a few months. It's the small, repeated habits that form the foundation of your steady climb up the financial ladder. Majuli sums it up with a memorable philosophy: wealth isn't built in a day, but in daily habits. Looking back, The Wealth Ladder isn't just a book about money. It's more like a roadmap, guiding us step by step from creating financial breathing room, making the most of idle cash, investing wisely, building skills, shaping our mindset for each stage of life, and most importantly, sticking to consistent habits. Nick Majuli's core message is crystal clear. Wealth doesn't come from a lucky break. It comes from small, steady steps, repeated every single day. You don't need to be a financial genius. You just need patience and discipline. If today you start with just one small habit, saving a little, reading one page of a finance book, putting a few dollars into an index fund, or simply spending 30 minutes a day listening to financial audiobooks on this channel, you've planted a new seed of thought. After a year, those tiny seeds can grow into a forest of knowledge, transforming the way you see money and life. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button to show your support, and subscribe so you don't miss future insights on books, finance, and investing. Because on this journey, you're not walking with just one book. You're part of a whole community climbing the wealth ladder together.
In America today, there's a paradox everyone can see. We work hard. We have more opportunities than ever before. Technology and capital are always available. And yet, countless businesses still go bankrupt after just a few years. Most people assume failure comes from a lack of ideas, money, or luck. But Keith Cunningham, a seasoned entrepreneur who lost millions of dollars to bad decisions, points to a harsher truth. What destroys most careers isn't the lack of resources, it's stupid decisions. We study math, we study history, but no one teaches us how to avoid the kinds of choices that can wipe out an entire career, family, and future. The road less stupid doesn't promise to turn you into a genius, but it will show you how to sidestep the deadly mistakes others have already made. If you want a smarter path to building wealth while avoiding the crushing cost of foolishness, stick with this video until the end. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future book summaries that can save you thousands of dollars in what Keith calls the dumb tax. Part 1. Dumb Tax. Lessons from Mistakes. Keith Cunningham begins with a hard truth. Most of us don't fail because we lack opportunities or intelligence. We fail because of bad decisions that could have been avoided. He calls the cost of those decisions the dumb tax. Think about it. In everyday life, we work hard to save a few dollars, hunting for discounts at Walmart or driving to the gas station across the street for a slightly lower price. But when it comes to big financial decisions, buying a house, starting a business, investing in the stock market, or scaling a company, one wrong move can wipe out hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. And the painful reality is that most of these failures don't happen because the market was too tough, but because we didn't take the time to think things through before jumping in. American business history is full of dumb tax lessons. Take the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s. Thousands of tech startups with no real products or profits were flooded with billions in capital simply because everyone else was doing it. When the bubble burst, countless investors and entrepreneurs lost everything. What they truly paid for wasn't just money, it was the lesson. Never let collective excitement replace your own judgment. On a personal level, maybe you've experienced something similar. Investing in a project because a friend swore it was a sure win, or rushing into a deal out of fear of missing out. Later, when reality hit, you realized you hadn't done your homework, hadn't measured the risks, and the loss became your dumb tax. Cunningham emphasizes, at some point in life, every one of us will pay this tax. The real question is, will you learn from it, or will you keep repeating the same mistakes until your capital and your confidence are completely drained? In both business and life, wisdom isn't about never being wrong, it's about facing failure head-on, dissecting it, and committing never to repeat it. If you can do that, then no matter how expensive your mistakes have been, the price you paid will still be worth it. Part 2. Thinking Time, the art of quality thinking. Keith Cunningham has a strange habit that turned into one of his greatest success secrets. He sets aside sessions he calls thinking time, time dedicated purely to thinking, with no distractions and no rush to act. It sounds simple, but in a world where we're constantly pulled into work, emails, phone calls, and social media, sitting down with a blank sheet of paper and questioning yourself has become both rare and incredibly powerful. During thinking time, Cunningham isn't daydreaming or chasing random ideas. He forces himself to wrestle with tough, important questions such as, if this decision is wrong, what will it cost me? Is there a better option I haven't considered? What assumptions am I making, and what if those assumptions are wrong? The answers don't come right away, but by patiently asking the right questions, he digs down to the root of the issue. As Cunningham puts it, the biggest mistake isn't having the wrong answer, it's asking the wrong question. We live in a society that worships speed. Whoever reacts fastest, launches first, or moves quickest to market is seen as the winner. But speed isn't always an advantage. A rushed decision can saddle you with a massive dumb tax, while spending just 1 extra hour in deep, focused thinking can save you decades of regret. Look at the most enduring businesses. They weren't always the first to launch, but they often understood the market better, anticipated risks more clearly, and built stronger foundations than their competitors. That edge came from investing in quality thinking. And thinking time isn't just for entrepreneurs or investors. It's for anyone facing life's big choices. Choosing a career, deciding where to live, or choosing a life partner. In the moment you pause, write down the right questions and answer them honestly, you give yourself the chance to see farther and act wiser, rather than being swept away by short-term emotions. Keith believes the quality of your life is directly proportional to the quality of the questions you ask. Thinking time is the tool to raise that quality.
Part 3. Principle-based decisions, not emotional ones. Human beings are emotional creatures. We make decisions driven by fear, greed, hope, and sometimes the impatience to prove ourselves. But Keith Cunningham warns, any major decision guided by emotion instead of principles is far more likely to be a wrong one. He calls these thinking traps. When you're excited about an investment opportunity that looks too good to fail, you're more likely to ignore red flags. When you're scared of losing money, you panic sell at the bottom and cut off your chance of recovery. The root cause is always the same. Without clear principles to anchor you, your emotions take the wheel. Principles aren't just empty slogans. They're tested rules of behavior you commit to follow no matter what you feel in the moment. For example, Cunningham always asks, if this decision goes wrong, will the cost take me out of the game? If the answer is yes, he never moves forward. He also highlights the difference between being smart and being wise. Smart people know how to make money when opportunities appear. Wise people have principles strong enough to avoid losing money when emotions flare. Principles give you discipline in every situation. They're like guardrails on a mountain road. You may not need them most of the time, but when your car starts to skid, those guardrails are what save you from going over the cliff. Without principles, emotions drag you into a destructive cycle of excitement, disappointment, regret. Emotions turn every decision into a gamble. Principles turn them into a predictable, sustainable system. Cunningham believes lasting wealth doesn't come from a few spectacular wins. It comes from thousands of small, consistent, principle-based decisions. Once you turn principles into habits, you stop being a victim of emotion and start becoming the master of the game. Part 4. Smart Financial Management. Keith Cunningham has a core belief. If you don't know how to manage your finances, you don't really have a business. You're just running an expensive hobby. And this applies not only to companies, but to personal life as well. He stresses that financial management isn't simply about how much money you make, it's about where the money flows and whether it's serving your long-term goals. Many people look wealthy on paper, but aren't truly wealthy in reality. They might earn hundreds of thousands, even millions, yet still live in constant shortage because they don't understand their own financial picture. According to Cunningham, the key is building a system to control cash flow. He doesn't believe in luck or vague hope that revenue will grow and everything will work out. Instead, he treats financial statements like the cockpit dashboard of an airplane. They tell you how high you're flying, how fast you're going, and whether you're in danger of crashing. Pilots never ignore their instruments, and neither do financially successful people. This requires proactive thinking rather than reactive habits. Instead of just checking a bank balance to decide what to spend, Cunningham encourages setting clear financial rules, such as what percentage of income goes back into reinvestment, what percentage is kept in reserves to buy time when crisis strikes, what percentage can be spent personally to maintain balance without overspending. He especially emphasizes the reserve fund. Many people don't fail because their idea is bad. They fail because they run out of money before the idea has time to work. Cash is the oxygen of both business and life. Without cash, you can't breathe. For Cunningham, smart financial management isn't about secret formulas. It's about discipline. Discipline in tracking, discipline in monitoring, discipline in setting limits and sticking to them. Just like staying physically healthy, there's no magic trick beyond eating well and exercising regularly. When you manage your finances well, you free your mind from the constant anxiety of money. You stop losing sleep over bills or making rushed, desperate choices. Instead, you gain the calmness to see further ahead, to think strategically instead of merely surviving day to day. And that calmness is the greatest advantage the financially undisciplined will never have.
Part 5. Discipline and Systems. Keith Cunningham once said something worth reflecting on. You can't build a great future on a foundation of impulsive actions. Sustainable success never comes from spur-of-the-moment decisions. It comes from discipline, repeated consistently, and built into a system. Imagine this. A business without clear processes is like a sports team stepping onto the field without a game plan. They might win a few matches by luck, but when real challenges come, they collapse quickly. Personal life works the same way. If your decisions are ruled by feelings, working when you feel motivated, quitting when you don't, your results will be as unstable as your emotions. Cunningham emphasizes that systems are what allow discipline to continue even when motivation disappears. People often assume disciplined individuals simply have iron willpower. In reality, they're smarter in one simple way. Instead of relying on feelings, they build systems that force them to stay on track. For example, instead of trying to remember to save money, they set up automatic transfers into a separate account the moment income comes in. Instead of trying to focus each time they work, they build habits like turning off notifications and blocking out deep work time. Systems are like protective fences. They keep you on course without draining your energy fighting temptation every day. Cunningham also highlights a crucial truth. Systems only matter if you stick to them on your worst days. Anyone can act disciplined when life is smooth. True success belongs to those who still follow their system when they're tired, discouraged, or distracted by adversity. Those difficult moments are what separate the amateurs from the professionals. Once you have both discipline and systems, you free yourself from countless small, repetitive decisions. Instead of wasting mental energy asking, should I do this or not? Or should I spend or save? The system decides for you. This allows you to focus your energy on what truly matters: long-term direction, big strategies, and real dreams. In the end, Cunningham warns, without discipline, you'll pay the price of chaos. Without systems, you'll pay the price of exhaustion. But with both, you build a solid foundation, one upon which lasting success can be created and sustained. Part 6. The greatest lesson: avoiding mistakes. Keith Cunningham puts it plainly. You don't have to be smarter than other people to get rich. You just have to make fewer mistakes than they do. This is the greatest lesson and the essence of the road less stupid. In business and in life, most people obsess over questions like, how do I win big? How do I create a breakthrough? But in reality, the most successful people think in the opposite direction. They're not chasing lucky breaks. They're focused on avoiding the setbacks that could wipe them out. Cunningham compares managing your finances and career to driving on a long road trip. To reach your destination, you don't have to drive faster than everyone else. What matters is that you don't crash into the guardrails or fall off a cliff. One major mistake can erase years of effort. The problem is, most of us are easily seduced by the shiny lights of opportunity. An investment that promises to double in 6 months. A big purchase made in a burst of emotion. A can't-miss startup pitch that sounds too good to pass up. And yet it's often those rushed decisions that turn into the heaviest burdens. Cunningham reminds us, success doesn't come from being right all the time. It comes from not letting the times you're wrong destroy the entire game. That's why he champions the art of thinking time. Taking the time to ask hard questions, envision worst-case scenarios, and calculate the cost of mistakes before taking action. The smartest entrepreneurs, investors, and individuals aren't those who can predict the future perfectly. They're simply the ones who build safety nets. They never bet everything on a single opportunity. They don't let emotions control their wallet, and they're humble enough to admit, I might be wrong. The greatest lesson Cunningham leaves us with is this: staying in the game matters more than winning quickly. You don't need a single perfect move to change your life. You just need to keep making wiser choices than yesterday while avoiding the dumb mistakes that could send you back to square one. In the end, success isn't a race to see who moves faster. It's a test of who can stay standing the longest. And the road less stupid, that's the road you need to walk with consistency. We often get obsessed with finding the formula for getting rich, but Keith Cunningham reminds us of a simple truth. The path to success isn't about being a genius, it's about avoiding the stupid mistakes that can wipe everything out. Remember, you don't have to win every battle, you just have to stay in the game until the end. And the less stupid road is the one that leads you to real freedom and lasting success. If you found value in these insights, hit like and subscribe so you won't miss more books that can change the way you think about money and life.